Out of nowhere, the hero booted Nicola from the party, and Nicola just stood there blinking, completely blindsided. 2 years earlier, the hero had recruited him to help take down the Demon Lord. Nicola turned the offer down at first, since work was basically his least favorite thing in the universe. But the hero and the others wouldn't quit nagging him, so he finally gave in, telling himself it would double as martial arts practice. Cheapest gym membership ever. Once he joined, the group ran into every strange magical creature you could imagine and clawed their way through one nasty trial after another, all as a team. Then, right when the Demon Lord's castle finally came into view, the hero turned around and cut him loose. Naturally, Nicola wasn't about to just nod along with a decision that made zero sense, but before he could argue, the pretty girl in the group cut in and reminded him he'd already gotten his answer. Nicola pushed back, saying they were supposed to be a team. The hero wasn't moved. He said he could never count a coward as a real member of a hero's party, called him a pawn who'd outlived his usefulness, and complained that his shaky reputation was dragging the group's image down. Nicola told him not to jump to conclusions so fast, which set off the other girl. She snapped at him, asking who he thought he was, then admitted, almost against her will, that his advice had genuinely sharpened her skills and made her stronger, and she was thankful for that. Nicola, hearing this, pointed out that this basically made him essential to the team, but she said she regretted it now, since people had started calling her the coward's disciple, and added that Nicola had no idea what it felt like to be branded a coward by total strangers. Nicola calmly said he didn't know, but he did know what it felt like to be branded one by the very comrades he'd been traveling with for ages. That earned him an eye roll of a response. There he goes again, never taking anything seriously, and she admitted she couldn't stand that about him. Nicola then just asked, plainly, whether they'd actually manage without him. The hero, brimming with confidence, said obviously they would, since he himself was the hero, and turned to the two girls for backup, who leaned in and agreed wholeheartedly. That was Nicola's cue. He understood the room completely now, so he decided to simply turn around and head back the way he'd come, wishing them luck against the Demon Lord. The hero cheerfully told him they'd be just fine as long as he was around. Then, as Nicola started to walk off, the hero called him a nuisance and told him to hurry up and vanish. Apparently that wasn't enough closure, because the hero then drew his sword and slashed Nicola across the back, lecturing him about not letting his guard down. The two girls, not wanting to miss out, followed up with strikes of their own. The hero then helped himself to Nicola's gear, mentioning it would come in handy, and as the group walked off and left him there, he tossed back one last, "Take care," complete with a mocking nickname, Mr. Jobless. Nicola, lying there, muttered to himself about who the real coward was after all that, and then the lights went out. 2 years then went by. In the middle of a conversation, Nicola declared flatly that he would never, under any circumstances, get a job. End of discussion. Across from him sat Ella, blessed with a rather generous melons, said nothing and just let him talk. Nicola reasoned to himself that the life of a martial artist demands constant training, both for building muscle and sharpening technique, and a job would only get in the way of that. On top of that, working meant forming social ties, and social ties made a person hesitant to risk their life. So, by his logic, taking a job basically counted as losing as a martial artist. Sat Ella caught his drift immediately and asked if he simply planned to keep freeloading off her. Nicola cheerfully confirmed that yes, that was exactly the plan. Sat Ella pointed out that she would have thrown him out onto the street ages ago if he weren't her little brother. Nicola shot back that it wasn't as if he had money troubles anyway. She covered all his living expenses, and whenever he needed pocket cash, he just went and beat up some bandits for it. Sat Ella noted that he'd apparently piled up a fair amount of cash that way and asked what exactly it was for. Nicola said that was a secret. Sat Ella replied that knowing him, it was probably nothing good, to which Nicola cheerfully informed her that she'd never find happiness sighing all the time. Sat Ella, unimpressed, asked whose fault she thought that sighing was. Nicola changed the subject, asking why she'd been pushing so hard lately to get him working, pointing out that she was rich enough to live comfortably forever, so one jobless brother shouldn't really put a dent in things. Sat Ella sighed again, still apparently unable to believe her own brother was the heir to a count's title, a title that came with zero land, granted to their uncle purely as an honor. She said she could do without the prestige herself, but either way, she was determined to get Nicola working. Nicola wished her luck, pointing out that no workplace would hire jobless trash like him. Sat Ella said not to worry, since she'd be the one referring him personally. He asked if she had some magical job in mind that paid well, offered endless vacation, and wouldn't mind if he slacked off constantly. Sat Ella told him he could go find that in his dreams, but the job she had in mind fit him like a glove. Nicola reminded her that he had zero intention of working and asked if she even remembered the philosophy behind that stance. Sat Ella answered that of course she did. His whole plan was to sponge off others and coast through life easy. Nicola looked a little stung by that summary, so Ella admitted she was just teasing, then added, more seriously, that it was about time he got over his past and rejoined society, since the world wasn't nearly as full of bad people as he seemed to think. She then revealed that the school she managed was currently hiring new teaching staff, and she intended to make Nicola an instructor there. Nicola assumed this meant teaching some proper subject, but Ella made it clear she didn't think he was qualified for that. When he asked what exactly he'd be teaching, she explained that, as everyone knew, the declining birth rate had become a serious social problem, and boosting the number of marriages was the proposed fix. Public pressure had pushed for schools to start teaching boys and girls how to bring out their personal appeal, and her school existed specifically for that purpose. Nicola, putting it together, realized that when she said appeal, what she really meant was strength. Apparently, back in the day, a person's appeal to the opposite sex used to be judged on things like income, looks, and brains, but that whole system had quietly gone extinct. These days, no matter how loaded, gorgeous, or brilliant someone was, if they couldn't throw a decent punch, none of the rest mattered. Ella explained that the scales had tipped heavily toward physical strength. One particularly bold commentator had gone so far as to declare that a man's worth boiled down to his muscles, and with both men and women now demanding strength from each other, the academy existed to meet that very specific, slightly ridiculous need. She told Nicola that sure, he was currently a certified jobless deadbeat, but he had once traveled with the Heroes Party, and his fighting skills were the real deal. She was confident the school would snap him up instantly. Teaching, she added, would also do wonders for his personal growth. Nicola, less convinced, wondered aloud whether he'd actually managed to get along with people, given that people weren't exactly his strong suit. Ella, brimming with sisterly confidence, assured him he'd fit right in no time. Nicola simply hoped she was right. She then mentioned, almost as an afterthought, that he'd also need to pass an exam to get the job. Nicola groaned internally at the sheer inconvenience of it all, but accepted that this was apparently just life now. Ella announced she'd personally be supervising the exam and warned him that if she caught him deliberately failing it, she'd toss him straight out of the house, a threat she wanted him to remember clearly. As a parting shot, she told him to give it everything he had, unless homelessness sounded appealing. Later, out in the streets of Shanoa, a nation built by immigrants where humans and demi-humans lived side by side, with elves, goblins, giants, orcs, and humans all crammed together, Nicola found himself, as usual, mildly amazed that everyone got along so peacefully. Reaching into his pocket, he discovered his wallet was missing, left at home, naturally. While pondering this minor disaster, a commotion caught his attention. A girl was nervously trying to explain that a man had bumped into her, while the man loudly harassed her, blaming her for the wrinkles now offending his precious shirt. Watching this unfold, Nicola figured this was his moment to look heroic. Just as the man started demanding money from her, Nicola swooped in, grabbed the girl, and told her to run. The two of them bolted, leaving the man shouting after them, demanding to know where exactly they thought they were going. They eventually ducked into an alley, and Nicola declared they were probably safe now, right before the bald man caught up, announcing triumphantly that he'd cornered them like rats in a trap. As the man swaggered closer, Nicola simply planted his feet, stayed perfectly calm, and a moment later sent a single punch straight into the man's body. As the bald man crumpled to the ground, the girl asked Nicola who exactly he was. Nicola turned to her, looking rather proud of himself, and announced that he was a man currently without direction in life, though that was about to change, since he was on his way to becoming a teacher. The girl looked surprised, and Nicola confirmed that it was at the Shanoa Academy. Hearing that, the girl smiled, realizing the timing lined up perfectly since she had just been admitted there that same day. Nicola took a closer look at her, clearly surprised, and couldn't help but think that she didn't look like the type for that place. From his perspective, she seemed pretty weak. The girl didn't deny it. That was exactly the reason she chose to enroll, wanting to change herself. She had even gone through the effort of getting permission from her parents just to attend the academy. After that, she introduced herself as Alice, mentioning that she would be starting as a first-year student. Nicola responded by extending his hand and introducing himself as well, acknowledging the meeting. Alice thanked him sincerely, admitting she had been in trouble earlier. Nicola brushed it off, saying there was no need to dwell on it, since he had his own reasons for stepping in. While saying that, his attention shifted toward the man's wallet. Without hesitation, he checked it and found 13 gold coins inside. Alice noticed what he was doing and questioned whether he was planning to take the wallet. Nicola didn't see any issue with it, thinking the man had no right to complain after trying to extort someone in the first place. Alice hesitated, feeling unsure about it, but Nicola cut that off, telling her not to overthink it. Before anything else could happen, someone suddenly arrived and called out to Alice as a princess. The mood shifted instantly. The newcomer stepped in and accused Nicola, treating him like a criminal and questioning why he had taken the princess into a back alley. Alice tried to explain what actually happened, but before she could finish, the girl rushed straight at Nicola and threw a punch. Nicola reacted calmly, dodging the attack without effort. He grabbed her arm and flipped her, slamming her to the ground in one clean motion. The girl was left stunned by how easily it happened. Alice immediately rushed over to her and called her Iris, clearly concerned. She asked why Iris would act like that. From Iris's side, she had only heard that someone had taken the princess away, so she rushed in to help without thinking twice. Alice reassured her that everything was fine and explained that Nicola, who was likely going to become a teacher at the academy, had actually helped her. Hearing that, Iris looked surprised. She quickly composed herself and bowed, offering an apology for the misunderstanding, realizing she had jumped to the wrong conclusion. Nicola pointed out that it wasn't a great look to throw a punch first and ask questions later. He even gestured to himself, implying that he didn't look like someone who would go around kidnapping people. Iris didn't agree with that at all. From her perspective, he still had the face of someone who looked like a typical criminal. Iris didn't stop there and went as far as seeing him as someone who looked like a friendless loser. Nicola got visibly annoyed, pointing out that whether he had friends or not had nothing to do with the situation at hand. Alice let out a small laugh and mentioned how it would actually be nice if he ended up as their homeroom teacher. Iris then brought up that exhibition matches were supposedly going to be held before the entrance ceremony, giving teachers a chance to show what they could do in front of the students. She wondered if Nicola had made it in time. Alice suggested that if things didn't line up, they could explain everything to the school on his behalf, as long as he was okay with it. Nicola agreed to that and said he was counting on them. Right after that, he mentioned that he needed to get moving and quickly ran off. Alice simply smiled as she watched him leave. The scene shifted to Shanoa Academy. Nicola arrived and apologized to his sister for being late. Ella didn't seem bothered, saying she had already been informed about what happened. She knew he had been helping a student deal with some thug. She even admitted that she used to think he was completely hopeless, but now it seemed like she might need to reconsider that opinion. She acknowledged his actions, giving him credit for what he did. Nicola, however, didn't fully buy it and felt like she didn't really mean it. He then brought up the exam. Ella explained that the audience had already been updated about the situation and that his opponent was waiting for him. Nicola checked if that meant he hadn't failed yet, and Ella confirmed that he was still in. She told him to go ahead and show what he could do, then asked if he still remembered how the exam worked. The rules were simple. It was a demonstration match, and he could win either by forcing his opponent to give up or by making them unable to continue. Nicola wondered if there were any restrictions, but Ella made it clear that everything was allowed. He could use any magic or weapon he preferred. She added with a faint smile that all of that probably didn't matter much anyway, since his fists had always been his strongest weapon. Combat, in his view, was divided into 3 main styles depending on what a person chose to specialize in. The first focused on firearms like guns and artillery, along with any similar weapons. These were simple, direct, and highly efficient, making them easy for almost anyone to use. The second category revolved around magic, where users controlled elements freely, creating forces like fire or water to deal damage over a wide area. The third style centered on the use of chi. Through intense training, martial artists and swordsmen learned to bring out their inner life force. Once that energy wrapped around their body, it hardened them beyond normal limits, letting them endure deadly falls and break solid rock with their strikes. Ella gave him a quiet warning, reminding him to think carefully before making a move since his opponent had noticeably high chi levels. Nicola just smiled, confident in himself, feeling that all those years spent fighting bandits and training alone in the mountains were about to pay off. Soon enough, Nicola and his opponent stepped onto the stage. The students immediately started reacting, some cheering loudly, others mentioning that they stayed just to watch this match. A few even expressed their appreciation for what he had done earlier in helping the princess. His opponent took notice of the attention and found it surprising that Nicola had already gained that kind of popularity. Then he released his chi, letting his presence speak for itself, clearly confident in his ability. From his perspective, very few people in the academy could control their chi as well as he could. Nicola looked at him and acknowledged that the man did seem skilled enough to back up that level of confidence. Still, he saw it as bad timing for the opponent, thinking that if they weren't facing each other, the man would have easily passed the test without any trouble. Nicola also made it clear he wanted to avoid any unnecessary issues later, almost as if preparing things ahead of time. The opponent didn't take it negatively and instead found the situation interesting. He noted how average Nicola's chi seemed in comparison and even found it amusing. Nicola, still smiling, stood there with his own chi barely noticeable next to the overwhelming presence of his opponent. Alice and Iris were walking along the corridor when Ella suddenly called out to her, pointing out where her seat was if she wanted to take it. Alice acknowledged it but made it clear she would be attending as a regular student and didn't want any special treatment. Ella accepted that and apologized. As she looked at Alice more closely, Ella couldn't help but notice how much she resembled the king. That caught Alice off guard, making her wonder if Ella actually knew her father. Ella confirmed that she did, explaining that the academy maintained close relations with the Elven Kingdom. There were even plans in place to build a sister school within Elven territory. Alice admitted she had no idea about any of that, realizing her father rarely kept her informed about important matters. It made her question whether she was even considered trustworthy enough. Satella reassured her in a different way, pointing out that the king had already entrusted her to the academy with the goal of shaping her into a strong combatant, and she intended to see that through. She added that graduating from the academy would earn her the king's respect, encouraging her to believe in herself. Alice responded positively, showing her determination to grow stronger and earn that trust. Satella seemed pleased with that mindset and supported it. She then brought up what she had heard about Alice running into trouble earlier. After hearing the explanation, Satella admitted she was glad her unreliable brother had managed to be useful for once. Iris then raised a concern, noticing that Nicola's chi levels seemed much lower than before, wondering if he might have been injured. Alice immediately started worrying, thinking it might have been her fault if he got hurt while helping her earlier. Satella dismissed that idea, assuring them that her brother was perfectly fine. From her perspective, the situation was simple. Nicola wasn't treating this like a demonstration match at all. To him, this was a real fight with nothing held back. Back at the arena, Nicola's opponent shifted the tone by suggesting he should just give up instead of making things harder. Nicola found that approach a bit blunt, especially coming out of nowhere like that. The opponent explained his reasoning, thinking ahead rather than just focusing on the match. Beating Nicola wouldn't be difficult for him, but he was more concerned about how it would look. He didn't want his reputation as a teacher to suffer by completely overpowering someone known for saving the Elven princess. From his point of view, popularity mattered, and this way both of them could walk away without damage to their image. He framed it as a win-win situation, continuing to justify it by comparing their abilities. Based on his assessment, his chi was around the level of a rank B adventurer, while Nicola was closer to the very bottom. To him, the difference was like that between an adult and a child stepping into a fight. Nicola let out a sigh and raised both of his hands. From the outside, it looked like he was giving in. His opponent took it as the right call, convinced that Nicola had finally made the sensible choice. Nicola went along with it, acting like he agreed. Then in an instant, everything flipped. Nicola moved in a flash and drove a kick straight into the man's groin. The impact dropped him immediately, and he rolled on the ground, overwhelmed by the sudden pain. Nicola stood over him calmly, already breaking down what had just happened like a lesson. The man kept writhing on the ground, still trying to process the unexpected hit. Nicola explained that he had lowered his chi output on purpose, making it look like he was surrendering. Because of the clear gap in their abilities, the opponent got careless and allowed him to get close. Since it never crossed the man's mind that Nicola would suddenly switch up and attack, he left himself completely open. On top of that, all the chi Nicola had been hiding was focused into his legs. With everything set up like that, it only took one clean strike to bring him down. Nicola made it clear that if there was a next time, the man should learn how real fights actually play out. The opponent looked at him, still down, while the announcer declared Nicola as the winner. The reaction from the crowd came immediately. Some students started shouting that Nicola was a coward and that what he did counted as foul play. A few teachers openly said they wouldn't accept him as one of their own, while others claimed he would set a bad example for students. The noise spread quickly, with people criticizing his methods as nothing but cheap tricks. Satella, watching from where she stood, stepped in to address it. She acknowledged that the win looked cheap, but pointed out that Nicola hadn't broken any rules. On top of that, the speed and amount of chi he used in that single kick were far from ordinary. More importantly, she made it clear that anyone who fell for something that simple had no business teaching at the academy. That shut the crowd up almost instantly. With that settled, Satella formally accepted Nicola as part of the academy's teaching staff. She encouraged everyone to take something from what they had just seen, reminding them that real combat doesn't always start in a straightforward way. Staying ready at all times and sharpening their instincts was what would truly make a difference in their training. On Nicola's first day as a teacher, he took a look around the academy and quickly noticed how things were set up. It felt almost like segregation. Students were grouped into classrooms based on their race. Orcs studied with orcs, humans with humans, and the same pattern applied across the board. There were only two exceptions to that system. The first was the elite classroom, made up entirely of the strongest students in the academy, known as the first class. The second was the one assigned to him, the ninth class. That classroom gathered the weakest first-year students. The academy only kept them around because of the money they brought in, which was why most of them came from noble families or wealthy merchant backgrounds. Nicholas stepped into the room, and the atmosphere immediately went quiet. Then Iris spoke up, clearly questioning why he was there. Nicola recognized her right away as the same girl he had thrown to the ground in the back alley earlier. He confirmed her identity in his head as Iris. Iris didn't hold back and demanded an explanation for his presence, questioning why someone like him was assigned as the teacher of their class. Nicola made it clear through his stance that he was there because he had been put in charge. Iris dismissed that outright, seeing no value in someone she considered a coward, and made it obvious she didn't think he belonged there. Other students quickly backed her up. Some agreed with her, while others openly told him to leave. Nicola stood there, taking it all in, and for a moment, it reminded him of his former party and how things ended with him. He then shifted the focus back to the class. He reminded them of where they stood, pointing out that they were the weakest among the first years. From his perspective, that alone raised a question. Did they really think they were in a position to choose their own teacher? The thought lingered, and the room went completely silent. He followed it up with another point, bringing up why someone like him, a new teacher, had been assigned to this class in the first place. He pushed them to actually think it through, making them face the reality of their situation. The answer was simple. No other teacher wanted to deal with this class. He had just drawn the short end of the stick, being tasked with handling what the academy considered the weakest group of students. One of the students admitted that they might be the weakest overall but pointed out that Iris was different. She was among the top 5 strongest students in the entire academy. Nicola didn't deny her strength but saw it differently. Compared to everyone else in the room, she had the highest chi, and that strength came from her role as Alice's bodyguard. Nicola made it clear that he wasn't there by choice and had no real intention of teaching them anything. From his perspective, that meant they could handle things on their own, treating it as self-study time. That caught the students off guard. One of them stood up and pushed back, saying they didn't need someone like him anyway. She believed they could get stronger on their own if they worked together. Others started agreeing with her, and just like that, the class began shifting toward training on their own terms. A few hours passed, and the classroom settled into its own rhythm. Some students were quietly reading, others were doing push-ups and sit-ups, and a few were even doing meditation. From what Nicola could see, only Iris really stood out as someone with actual ability. He decided it was time to check on the rest of the class. Nicola walked over to Alice and casually took the book from her hands. She looked confused, trying to understand what he was doing, but he had already decided to test her strength. He then told everyone holding a book to put it away and switch to doing push-ups instead. That caught some of the students off guard, especially one who couldn't help but question what happened to the whole self-study idea. Nicola ignored the distraction and focused on Alice, checking if she could even do push-ups. It turned out she couldn't. He had her try anyway. Alice got down and attempted it, but she dropped almost immediately, unable to complete even a single proper one. He had her attempt it again, but this time with a specific focus. Instead of spreading her chi throughout her whole body, she needed to concentrate it only in her upper body. While chi could flow through the entire body, it could also be directed into one area to strengthen it. Since push-ups relied mostly on the arms and chest, any chi going to the legs or head was basically wasted. Alice tried again, keeping that in mind and focusing her chi only where it mattered. This time, she managed to do it, which surprised her. Nicola noticed that she was actually pretty good at controlling and directing her chi to specific parts of her body. From her side, she understood why. She didn't have much strength or chi to begin with, but she had always been quick when it came to circulating it through her body. Nicola felt like he had a clear idea of her capabilities now and told her to go back to her self-study. Teaching others like this could actually make him stronger too, but in this situation he still didn't see much point in fully committing. If things didn't work out, he could just get fired, and that would be the end of it. As he glanced out the window, something caught his attention. There was a group of students gathered, and it looked like trouble. It seemed like a fight might be breaking out. Outside, an orc girl was picking on a group of students. Alice stepped in and tried to stop it, asking her to leave them alone. But the orc girl had no intention of backing off. From her point of view, anyone from the 9th class was just there to be pushed around. Nearby, students from the 1st class were also watching, and Nicola caught part of the exchange as things started to escalate. The orc girl kept going, tearing into the students from the 9th class. From her point of view, they were nothing but trash who relied on their parents' money to cover up their lack of ability. She saw them as a group of cowards who had no place there, saying they should at least be grateful she was giving them a reason to exist in the academy. Alice pushed back, seeing it as nothing more than arrogance. The orc girl didn't deny that at all. Instead, she leaned into it, believing that strength was exactly what allowed someone to have that kind of ego in the first place. As long as she remained one of the strongest in the academy, she saw everyone else as nothing more than targets for her to push around. The fear on the faces of the students she had already beaten only reinforced her view. To her, that fear was proof that the 9th class was filled with cowards. Alice didn't deny that label completely, but she pointed out that they were still kind people at heart. The orc girl didn't care about that and decided to push things further. She called over 2 students and forced them into a situation where they had to fight each other. The one who won would be spared from her bullying. Alice immediately objected, but it didn't matter. The 2 students ended up clashing anyway. The orc girl watched it unfold with amusement, seeing it as proof of how pathetic they were, both on the outside and inside. Alice couldn't accept that and told her to stop. She didn't want her classmates to be humiliated like that. The orc girl had no intention of stopping. From her perspective, this was just getting started, and she made it clear she would keep targeting both Alice and the rest of the class. At that point, Alice moved forward, ready to strike back. But before anything could happen, Nicholas stepped in and stopped her. He saw what was really going on and pointed out that she was being baited into a fight. Alice was caught off guard by that. Meanwhile, the orc girl made it obvious she wanted that outcome, eager to ruin Alice's face and mocking her for being born into royalty. Alice, frustrated, felt like she was failing in her role as the elven princess, unable to properly protect the people around her. Nicola pointed out the obvious to Alice, reminding her that her opponent was an orc and that she didn't stand a chance as things were. Even so, Alice didn't back down and stayed focused on her goal of becoming stronger. He pressed further, wondering if she was willing to go that far no matter what it took. Alice didn't hesitate, making it clear that she would do anything to protect what mattered to her, even if it meant becoming something she didn't like. Nicola understood where she was coming from and could see how serious she was about it. He accepted that resolve and offered to guide her down that path. At the same time, he warned her that others might end up calling her a coward for the way she chose to grow stronger. Alice didn't see that as a problem. She had already made up her mind. Nicola checked once more if she was really sure, recalling how his previous disciple couldn't stand being labeled that way. Alice, on the other hand, was ready to ignore any insults as long as she could protect the people she cared about. She lowered her head and formally asked to be taken in as his disciple. Nicola looked at her and gave a small smile, acknowledging her decision. The next day, Nicola's classroom fell into complete silence. The students stayed in their seats with nothing to do, their focus drifting as boredom slowly filled the room. Iris eventually got up and walked straight to Nicola's desk, stopping right in front of him. She grabbed him by the collar and looked down at him, clearly fed up with the situation. Nicola didn't react much and stayed calm, seeing it as an odd way to treat a teacher. Iris pushed the issue further, pointing out that he still hadn't taught them anything at all. Nicola answered without changing his tone, sticking to what he had already made clear before. As long as he didn't like how things were, he had no intention of teaching anyone. From his perspective, they could just stay where they were and handle things on their own. Without warning, he grabbed Iris and threw her back into her seat, telling her to focus on learning by herself. The entire class was left stunned, whispering among themselves about how easily he handled her. Nicola stood up and shut the noise down, telling everyone to keep quiet and go back to their self-study. Right then, the door suddenly opened and Alice rushed in, apologizing for being late. She was clearly out of breath, but Nicola didn't let that slide, pointing out that she was well past late at that point. Alice explained that she had left before dawn but still couldn't make it in time, coming all the way from the Elven Kingdom. Iris immediately checked on her, asking if she had something urgent to deal with that day. Alice confirmed it, mentioning that she had to run the entire way just to get to class. Iris understood the situation and reminded her that next time, she should at least inform her ahead of time. Alice apologized, but made it clear she couldn't let Iris come along this time. From her side, this was part of her personal training. She even smiled a bit, feeling confident as she revealed that she had become Nicola's disciple. Iris didn't take that well at all. She strongly opposed the idea, seeing it as completely unreasonable for Alice to follow someone she viewed as a coward, even pointing straight at Nicola. Alice immediately stepped in, not allowing that kind of disrespect toward their teacher. She even bowed toward Nicola, apologizing for Iris' behavior. But right after that, she suddenly moved and threw a kick at Nicola. He saw it coming and reacted instantly, catching her leg without any trouble. Alice wasn't surprised and seemed to have expected that outcome. From Nicola's point of view, though, she was on the right track, using the apology as a way to create an opening. Iris watched the whole thing unfold, clearly shaken by how Alice was actually learning from someone she had dismissed earlier. Nicola then shifted the focus, saying there was something they needed to settle first now that she had officially become his disciple. Alice wondered if he was about to teach her some kind of special technique, but Nicola had something else in mind. He made it clear that it was time to deal with the orc girl who had made her cry the day before. They made their way to the first class. The moment they arrived, it was obvious how different it felt compared to the 9th class. The atmosphere alone was on another level. Alice asked whether they should go in through the front or the back, and Nicola chose the back without hesitation. He opened the door, but the moment they stepped in, everyone inside noticed them right away. Nicola couldn't help but acknowledge that the students of the first class really lived up to their reputation, having sharp awareness. The teacher inside paused the lesson and questioned their presence, pointing out that class was still in session. Nicola didn't waste time and got straight to the point. One of the students from that class had been bullying someone from his class, and they had come to address it. He called out the orc girl, making it clear they should take things outside. The orc girl didn't take it seriously and saw it as the princess relying on a teacher to settle things for her. From her perspective, that just made Nicola look even more pathetic. Nicola didn't react to that the way she expected. He made it clear that she had misunderstood the situation, because he wasn't the one who would be fighting her. The orc girl got up and asked who would be stepping in instead. Nicola made it clear that it would be Alice. That alone shocked everyone in the room. The orc girl couldn't take it seriously, seeing the matchup as completely one-sided, like a lion going up against a bunny. Some of the students around them even started laughing at the idea. Nicola didn't deny the current gap. As things stood, Alice really couldn't beat her. But he wasn't talking about the present. He gave it a clear time frame of 3 months, confidently saying that by then, Alice would be able to take her down. The orc girl dismissed it right away, not believing anything could change in such a short time. Nicola pushed back, pointing out that things wouldn't improve under her current teacher. But with him guiding Alice, he was sure she would surpass her within that period. That statement drew attention from the orc girl's teacher, who stepped in and challenged Nicola's confidence. From his perspective, Nicola was talking big despite not earning his position properly. He saw Nicola as someone who got his role through cheap tricks and connections rather than actual merit. As he spoke, he started releasing his chi, letting the pressure fill the room. Nicola could feel that force clearly, describing it like it was piercing through him. He acknowledged that it was impressive. The teacher took that as a sign of intimidation, assuming Nicola was starting to feel the difference in power. But Nicola didn't see it that way. He remained calm, knowing he was stronger, but chose not to escalate things directly. Instead, he casually pointed out something behind the teacher, making it seem like the principal had arrived. The teacher instinctively reacted and turned to look. That was all the opening Nicola needed. In the next instant, he closed the distance and kicked the teacher right in his nuts. The entire room froze from the sudden move. The teacher dropped to the ground, completely knocked out. Nicola then addressed everyone there, making it clear that neither he nor Alice had any problem fighting dirty if needed. He made a firm statement that within 3 months, Alice would come out on top. He left them with a challenge, telling them to expect that outcome when the 1st and 9th classes faced off in the arena. The next morning at Satella's house, Alice arrived and paused for a moment, unsure if it was all right for her to just walk in. Before she could decide, someone called out to her. 3 men approached and started sizing her up, trying to figure out if she had any connection to Nicola. Alice looked confused as they questioned her. One of them, a bald subordinate, doubted that Nicola even had friends in the first place. Another assumed that Alice had come for the same reason they did. From their point of view, she was probably there to get back at Nicola for humiliating her. Not long after, all 3 of them started shouting, calling Nicola out and demanding he come outside. Nicola opened the door, wondering who was making that much noise so early in the morning. At the same time, Alice referred to him as her teacher, which immediately threw the 3 men off. They hadn't expected that at all. Nicola confirmed it, making it clear that Alice was his pupil. The bald man took it as Nicola playing tricks on them, but before anything else could happen, Nicola suddenly struck, kicking one of them straight in the groin. The bald man reacted in confusion, trying to understand why he would do something like that out of nowhere. From Nicola's side, it was simple. They were being too loud, and dealing with them was no different from shutting off a noisy alarm in the morning. To him, it was just the same idea applied differently. One of the men couldn't help but point out how twisted that reasoning sounded. Nicola made it clear he didn't treat just anyone like this, but these men were a different case. He recognized them as bandits and already knew why they had shown up. They were there for revenge, acting on behalf of their former boss. He questioned whether they were still holding a grudge because he had captured their leader and handed him over to the authorities. The bald man confirmed it, explaining how everything had fallen apart after that. Their entire group had collapsed, splitting into factions that were now fighting among themselves. Without their boss to hold things together, chaos had taken over. From his perspective, the only way to stop more pointless bloodshed was to take Nicola down and rise as the new leader. Nicola saw through it clearly. No matter how they tried to frame it, they were just there to kill him for their own benefit. He clapped his hands lightly, treating the situation almost casually, seeing them as no different from himself in terms of how they operated. At the same time, he pointed out something they didn't expect. The reward money he received for capturing their boss hadn't been kept for himself. He had already given it away to people who actually needed it. The bald man didn't buy anything Nicola said and saw it as nothing but lies. From his point of view, someone like Nicola would never do something like that. He fixated on the idea of taking Nicola down himself, convinced he would claim his head. One of the other men tried to warn him, reminding him to stay alert, especially for that usual low attack Nicola was known for. But before anything else could happen, Nicola stepped in and landed a clean punch straight to the bald man's face. The others were caught off guard, confused about why he didn't go for his usual approach. From their perspective, he always relied on those underhanded moves. Nicola didn't see it that way at all. He made it clear through his actions that he didn't have some weird obsession with aiming low. He simply read the situation and picked whatever move worked best at that moment. There was a reason he often targeted the groin. Opponents who expected it would naturally focus on protecting that area, which left other parts of their body exposed. That's exactly what happened here. The moment they fixated on one type of attack, they left themselves open elsewhere without realizing it. The realization hit them too late. They had already walked right into his setup. Nicola made one thing very clear to them. If they even thought about using Alice as a hostage, he wouldn't hesitate to break them on the spot. Then he turned to Alice, seeing this as the perfect opportunity for her. He wanted her to take down one of them herself. Alice hesitated at first, caught off guard by being put on the spot, but she started releasing her chi anyway. Nicola pointed out how she didn't hesitate like this when she tried to strike him earlier. From her side, it was different because she knew he wouldn't harm her. One of the bandits snapped back, refusing to accept the idea of being overpowered by her. Before that could go any further, Nicola stepped in again and slapped the man across the face, shutting him up instantly. The bandits reacted, questioning his actions, but Nicola didn't see any issue with it. From his perspective, they had no ground to complain after everything they had done. He then gave Alice a straightforward way to look at it. To him, bandits were nothing more than targets meant to be dealt with. Thinking of them like tools or constructs weighed down by their own crimes made it easier to act without hesitation. Leaving them alone would just be a waste. Right then, the bandits rushed forward, trying to strike Nicola. He reacted instantly, landing another precise kick that dropped one of them again. Nicola used that moment as a lesson for Alice. There were always multiple ways to create an opening. By provoking an opponent, it was possible to make them careless, just like what happened when you baited them into lowering their guard. With that done, Nicola turned away, and Alice followed, both of them walking off as the situation settled behind them. At Satella's residence, Nicola showed Alice around, starting with the dojo before pointing out the library. Alice was caught off guard by how many books were there. It wasn't what she expected. Nicola explained that his family had always been made up of martial artists across generations. Among all those records, there was even a secret manuscript written by Korn, one of the fighters from the legendary hero Roy's party. Hearing that, Alice found it impressive and wondered if Nicola was actually part of Korn's bloodline. Nicola didn't focus on that part and instead brought up what Korn had written. In those records, Roy, known as the strongest man to ever live, was described as someone humble with strong character. From Nicola's point of view, that kind of person stood in complete contrast to certain other heroes he had in mind. Alice then wondered if Nicola had any connection to the current hero. Nicola didn't hold back on that topic. From his perspective, that person wasn't even worth being associated with, to the point that he would rather not admit knowing them at all. Alice found that hard to match with what she had heard. As far as she knew, the current hero had a reputation for being friendly and easy to get along with. Nicola didn't agree with that image. To him, if that person really was considered amicable, then that would make them something far beyond what he believed. From his own experience, that same person had betrayed him, going as far as attacking him from behind and taking all of his equipment. But Alice pointed out something that didn't line up. The current hero was known to be a woman. That caught Nicola off guard. For a moment, he paused, realizing that what she said could actually be true. The title of hero was given to the winner of a yearly tournament held by the Kingdom of Size. In simple terms, the hero was the strongest warrior to come out of that kingdom, chosen with the purpose of defeating the Demon Lord. Alice wondered if Nicola had once been part of a previous hero's party. Nicola confirmed that he had, though it was something he didn't like looking back on. In the past, he had served as a martial artist in the party led by the hero Jay. That caught Alice's attention right away. Nicola explained that he hadn't been selected by the kingdom itself but got in through connections. A magician and a swordswoman he knew had invited him to join, and he eventually accepted. Alice tried to connect the names and realized he might be referring to Mary and Jessica. Nicola was surprised that she recognized them. Alice didn't know them personally, but their reputation had spread far. They were known as some of the strongest fighters in the Size Kingdom, and being part of the hero's party only made them more famous. Nicola acknowledged that they were definitely well known. That led Alice to wonder why Nicola himself wasn't as recognized, even though he had been part of the same group. Nicola wondered if Alice had actually heard about him before. She thought back for a moment and realized she might have come across rumors of a martial artist known for using what people called cowardly tactics, and she connected that image to him. Nicola acknowledged that it was indeed him. That only made Alice more curious. Even with those stories going around, his name still wasn't widely known, and she found that hard to understand. From his side, the reason was simple. It all came down to Jay. That man cared a lot about appearances and had gone out of his way to hide anything that made him look bad. In the end, when he couldn't completely cover things up, he chose to remove Nicola from the party instead. Alice looked at him and started to understand that he had gone through more than he let on. Nicola casually brought up Jay and wondered how he was doing these days. From what Alice knew, things weren't going well. The last update she had heard was that the Demon Lord had taken his chi during their fight, and ever since then he had been in a really bad state. Nicola didn't seem surprised at all and saw it as a fitting outcome. In his mind, that party had never been strong enough without him, so hearing that didn't shock him. He also believed Jay wasn't the type of person who could face his companions when he was at his lowest. Even so, he admitted he was still glad the man was alive. Alice saw it differently and thought that, in the end, they had still been companions. To her, it was a relief knowing Nicola didn't seem to hold a grudge over being removed from the group. But Nicola didn't share that view. From his perspective, it was the opposite. He was actually looking forward to the chance to settle things himself. If they ended up dying too easily, he wouldn't even be satisfied with that. After that, he decided to move on from the topic and shift the focus back to Alice's training. He pointed out that the library they were standing in wasn't just for show. For him, it was the core foundation of how he planned to train her. Nicola laid out the foundation of his training approach in a straightforward way. The first pillar focused on spotting openings in an opponent and taking advantage of them, whether that meant landing a decisive strike or going for something more disruptive like targeting the eyes. The second pillar was about controlling the flow of the fight and steering it in her favor. The last one centered on knowledge, specifically the techniques and insights stored in the books around them. He pointed out that the library wasn't just for show. It held records of different martial arts from various places and eras. From there, she could pick up a wide range of striking and grappling techniques that suited her style. From his perspective, that alone should be enough to get her motivated. Nicola didn't believe in rigid, step-by-step teaching when it came to martial arts. Most fighters trained to build muscle and increase their chi, but when it came to actual combat, they often ended up just trading blows without much thought. His approach was different. He believed there were styles that could let someone hold their ground even without overwhelming strength or chi. Because of that, he saw Alice's chances against the orc as better than they looked on the surface. What worked in their favor even more was the mindset of their opponent. The orc girl clearly underestimated Alice, and that kind of confidence often led people to drop their guard when things didn't go as planned. On the other hand, they had time and a clear goal. That gave them the chance to study, prepare, and build a strategy properly. With that in mind, Nicola decided the first step was to see exactly what Alice was capable of. There were countless fighting styles out there, and Nicola knew there was no way Alice could master all of them in just 3 months. Because of that, they had to narrow things down and focus on the one that suited her the most. He broke it down into 2 main categories. The first was made up of strikers, fighters who relied on punches and kicks to deal damage. That style leaned more on reach than raw muscle, which usually worked better for people with taller builds. The second group was grapplers, fighters who focused on throws and holds. That approach required a lot of strength, since it depended on overpowering the opponent once contact was made. Alice tried to place herself into one of those categories, thinking she had a leaning toward one of them. But Nicola didn't see it that way. From his perspective, she didn't clearly fit into either group. That caught her off guard and made her question whether she had any real talent at all. Nicola stopped her from jumping to conclusions. He didn't see those 2 categories as the only way to decide what suited her. There were other factors to consider, and her path wasn't limited to just those options. From Nicola's perspective, grapplers generally had more resilience. Their style focused on defense first, waiting for the right moment to counter and take control with a hold. Strikers, on the other hand, had to stay calm under pressure and create their own openings. In a real fight, the moment someone lost their composure, their defense would slip without them even noticing. Looking at it that way, Alice started to see where she stood. Her tendencies leaned more toward the striker side. Nicola agreed with that direction and, for now, gave her a clear task. She needed to go through all the books laid out for her before the day was over. It was a heavy amount of material, but that was part of the process. Alice couldn't help but wonder if he had actually read all of them himself. From what she could tell, he had. That realization made her see him differently. Up until now, she had only thought of him in a certain way, but that impression started to shift. Nicola caught on to that and questioned if that was really all she had thought of him before. Alice made it clear that wasn't the case anymore. From her point of view, he was someone worth respecting. Nicola then changed things up. Instead of spreading it out, he told her to finish reading everything before noon. That caught her off guard, making her wonder what they had planned for later. From his side, the afternoon was reserved for something else. He wanted to show her his actual strength without relying on the kind of tactics people kept labeling as cowardly. Later on, as they walked through the streets, they noticed how crowded it had become. It didn't take long to figure out why. The hero was visiting. Officially, it was meant to strengthen ties with the Kingdom of Size, but judging by the crowd, it was clear that the hero was just as popular in Shanoa as well. Nicola pointed out that heroes were always popular wherever they went. Thinking back on his own past, he remembered that it had been the same back then. With that in mind, he decided to take Alice somewhere different and led her toward a gambling hall. Once inside, Nicola casually greeted the manager. The manager responded right away and quickly recognized Alice as the elven princess. From his reaction, it was clear he was already familiar with her reputation and was pleased to see her doing well. Alice was caught off guard, unsure how he knew her, but it turned out she was simply that well known. The manager then turned his attention back to Nicola, wondering what brought him there. Nicola made it clear that Alice was now his disciple and that he had come to show her his real strength. The manager picked up on what that meant right away and understood the situation. Nicola confirmed it by signing himself up for a match. The manager didn't hesitate and welcomed him as always. Nicola went a step further and asked for the strongest opponent available. The manager agreed and mentioned that they actually had someone so strong that they had trouble finding a proper match for them. That only made it more interesting for Nicola. On top of that, Nicola requested a handicap for himself. The manager accepted that idea and arranged the match accordingly. He handed Nicola a ring that would restrict his chi to only 1/3 of its usual capacity. Nicola agreed to the condition without hesitation. The manager led them forward, guiding them toward the magic portal. Just before stepping in, Nicola asked if Alice could come along as well. The manager pointed out the condition that if she interfered in any way, Nicola would be disqualified. Nicola didn't see that as a problem. From his perspective, she wouldn't be helping him at all. If anything, she would just get in the way if she tried. Hearing that, the manager decided to allow it this time and made an exception. Nicola acknowledged it and thanked him. Both Nicola and Alice stepped into the magic portal. As soon as they were gone, the manager turned to one of the employees and gave a quick order. He had the employee place all 100 gold coins on Nicola. The employee hesitated, wondering if that was really a good idea, considering the situation they had just seen. But the manager didn't second-guess it. To him, that uncertainty was exactly what made the bet worthwhile. He was fully convinced that Nicola would come out on top. Nicola and Alice stepped into the battleground, where a woman was already waiting for them. She looked at the two of them and tried to figure out which one was her opponent, whether it was Nicola or the girl behind him. Nicola made it clear through his stance that he was the one she would be facing. The woman didn't seem too concerned either way. From her perspective, it didn't matter much. She expected him to at least last long enough to keep things interesting for a minute. Nicola saw it differently and felt like that line fit him more than her. Looking at her equipment, especially the polished white armor, Nicola figured she wasn't just anyone. She looked like a high-ranked adventurer. That caught her off guard, since neither Nicola nor Alice seemed to recognize her. Nicola confirmed that he had never seen her before and pushed for an answer. She admitted that she used to be an adventurer, implying she wasn't active anymore. Nicola turned his attention back to Alice, treating it like a lesson. From his point of view, this was going to be easy, and she would get a clear view of how strong he really was. Then he faced the woman again and made it clear that he wouldn't need much effort to take her down. That clearly irritated her. She didn't take it as confidence but as mockery. Nicola didn't back down from that stance and even suggested he could take on more restrictions if needed. Before anything else could be said, the woman moved first and launched an attack. Nicola didn't rush or panic. He simply avoided it with ease. At first, she thought that single move would be enough, but when she saw him standing there completely unharmed, it threw her off. She followed up with more attacks, swinging her sword again and again, but none of them connected. Each strike missed, and the more it happened, the harder it was for her to process. From her perspective, it didn't make sense how he was avoiding everything so cleanly. Nicola kept it simple and showed the difference in strength right away. He told the woman that the reason she couldn't land anything was because he was simply stronger, then casually flicked her on the head. That alone was enough to knock her down, sending her crashing to the ground. He turned to Alice, making sure she was paying attention, showing her that this was what he could do even without relying on the kind of tactics people liked to call cowardly. From her side, it was clear enough. She could see that his strength was real. The woman started to realize she was losing and couldn't accept it. She rejected the idea that she was weak, but Nicola pointed out the reality of the situation. She had just been beaten by someone barely using any effort. He then shifted his approach, deciding to take things more seriously. The woman reacted immediately, swinging her sword again in frustration, but Nicola avoided it without any trouble and countered by slapping her across the face. While all that was happening, he kept explaining things to Alice like it was part of a lesson. He broke down how certain moves worked, pointing out that something like an uppercut shouldn't be used on its own. It worked better when mixed into a series of lighter strikes so the opponent couldn't easily read or dodge it. As he continued explaining, the woman broke down emotionally, tears forming as the weight of the situation caught up to her. Nicola noticed it but didn't see himself as having done anything excessive. From her side, she felt like everything was on her shoulders, as if the fate of humanity depended on her, and losing wasn't something she could allow. Nicola didn't agree with that mindset. To him, that kind of burden was too much for one person to carry. He saw it as something unrealistic and told her to face things as they really were. From his perspective, the fight itself hadn't been anything special. He moved in and grabbed her by the neck, using the moment to show Alice a grappling technique. He pointed out how it was similar to what she had already done before, explaining that those kinds of moves weren't just for throwing someone but could also be used to lock them down. Alice followed along, recognizing the idea behind it. Nicola then dropped the woman to the ground, wrapping things up by saying there were too many techniques to go through all at once and that he would show her more another time. To him, the match had been disappointing overall. With that, he called for Alice, and the two of them left the arena. Meanwhile, the noble audience watching couldn't believe what they had just seen. From their perspective, it looked like the hero had been defeated. News spread fast. The hero had been defeated, losing to a martial artist from the Republic of Shanoa. The impact hit the Sais kingdom hard, shaking people as the story traveled from place to place. It wasn't something any nation would take lightly. Having their strongest warrior beaten by someone from another country naturally stirred unrest. In the capital, Sais town, people were already talking about it. Word got around that the strongest woman, the current hero, had been taken down. Adventurers gathered and discussed it among themselves, trying to figure out who could have done something like that. The name that kept coming up was a martial artist from Shanoa, which only made it harder for them to believe. To them, it didn't add up that someone like that could defeat the hero. Not far from that conversation, someone called out to Jay, referring to him as the former hero. He didn't seem to like being called that. The man who approached him apologized and tried to lighten the mood, offering him a drink and covering the round. As Jay took the mug and drank, the man pointed out how adventurers usually handled their drinks with that kind of energy. Jay didn't see himself that way. From his perspective, he wasn't just an adventurer. He still saw himself as a hero. The man didn't argue with that and let him call himself whatever he wanted. While sitting there, Jay couldn't help but think back. Ever since Nicola left, the party hadn't been functioning the same way. Things had fallen apart and he felt it. If Mary and Jessica had at least stayed with him, maybe it would have been different. The man then brought up the news, checking if Jay had heard about it. Jay asked what exactly had happened, and the man told him straight. The real hero had been defeated. Jay couldn't accept it right away. From what he knew, the current hero was on a completely different level. She was someone who could take down 100 demons without taking a single hit. Hearing that she lost didn't make sense to him. The man added more to it, saying she had been beaten by just one person, a single human, a martial artist. That detail hit Jay differently. The moment he heard it, Nicola came to mind. He immediately wondered if that same kind of fighting style had been used, the kind that relied on catching opponents off guard with underhanded moves. But that idea didn't match what people were saying. From what the man had heard, the fight had been completely one-sided, with the martial artist overwhelming the hero using almost no effort, even down to fighting with just a single finger. That made Jay pause. If that was true, then it couldn't have been Nicola. Then the man added something that changed the mood. From what he had heard, the martial artist's name was actually Nicola. That caught Jay's attention. The man even pointed out how impressive it was, seeing how Nicola still had that kind of presence, making it clear he was someone with strong connections. Hearing that, Jay started thinking things through. If Nicola really was the one who pulled that off, then it meant he had grown even stronger after being removed from the party. That thought alone shifted something in him. He let out a small laugh, which only confused the man watching him. But in Jay's mind, everything was starting to line up. This felt like an opportunity. If he could bring Nicola back into his group, there was a chance he could reclaim his position as the hero. With that decision made, Jay suddenly got up from his seat. The man asked where he was headed, but Jay was already set on his destination. He was going to Shanoa. As he looked up at the clear sky, he felt like luck had never stopped favoring him, as if everything was finally falling into place again. The scene shifted to the domain of the Demon Lord. One of the demons brought up the news that the hero from Sais had been defeated. He then turned his attention to Mary, asking what she thought about it as a fellow human, curious about her perspective. Mary didn't present herself as someone whose opinion held any weight. She kept her tone low, acting as if she had no place to speak in front of him and showing no intention of crossing any line. The demon found that attitude strange. From his point of view, she had once been part of the hero's party and had taken down countless officials from the demon army with her magic. Acting like she had no past didn't match what he knew about her. Mary let out a small laugh, brushing it off and saying that she had been mistaken back then. Now, she had come to understand that humans stood no chance against the demon lord's forces. The demon moved on and brought up another detail, recalling that the one who defeated the hero was a martial artist named Nicola. That name caught Mary off guard immediately. It was someone she knew well, her master. Her expression softened as emotion surfaced, and despite everything, she felt relieved knowing he was still alive. Her thoughts drifted back to the past. During her time in Jay's party, she had developed feelings for him. But Jay had always been surrounded by others, giving his attention elsewhere, leaving no space for her. In the end, she chose to leave the group and head back to Sais. But before she could make it home, she was captured by one of the Demon Lord's officials. What followed changed her. The constant beatings and treatment she received at the hands of the Demon Lord's subordinates forced her to see things differently, shaping the way she now viewed the world. Mary finally came to understand her master's actions. The weight of that realization hit her all at once, and she broke down, overcome with emotion. She wished she could apologize to Nicola, regretting that it had taken her so long to come to her senses. The demon watching her didn't fully understand her reaction and casually offered her the chance to go meet him. From what he knew, Nicola was currently living in the Republic of Shanoa, a place where humans and demi-humans lived side by side. He then laid out his plan. He intended to approach Nicola with a large sum of money and bring him into their army. For that, he wanted Mary to go ahead and scout him first. If she succeeded, both she and Nicola would be rewarded with the title of Marquis. That offer caught Mary off guard, but there was a condition tied to it. A curse would be placed on her, and if she ever tried to escape, it would cost her life. The demon made it sound simple. If everything went as planned, the two of them could live comfortably there without any problems. He then looked to her for an answer, leaving the decision in her hands. In the end, Mary accepted the task. Near the border between the Republic of Shanoa and the Demon Lord's domain, a guard approached a prisoner and informed her that she had a visitor. The prisoner, known as Number 16, was caught off guard and wondered who would even come to see her. The guard mentioned that it was one of the army's generals, which only made her more confused about what someone like that could possibly want with her. When she was brought into the room, the man introduced himself as General Risewood. He didn't waste time and went straight to the point, asking if she was Jessica, a former member of the Heroes Party. She confirmed it. Risewood made it clear he didn't have time to waste and got straight to the point. He brought up a name and asked if she knew someone called Nicola. Hearing that name brought back a lot. After Nicola had been removed from their group, everything had started falling apart. Then Jay lost to the Demon Lord, and things only got worse from there. On top of that, she had grown tired of Jay's constant affairs and decided to leave the party herself. While heading back towards Size, she unknowingly crossed into another territory and ended up killing a demi-human. When she returned home, she tried to defend herself, but the situation didn't go her way. The demi-human she killed was from an allied nation, and the kingdom didn't want to risk damaging their diplomatic ties. In the end, she was ordered to turn herself in. Without the means to post bail, all she could do was wait for her sentence to run its course. Back in the present, she focused on why she was there and wondered what Nicola had done to get brought up like this. Risewood seemed pleased that she recognized the name. From her side, it was only natural. They had been part of the same party, and more than that, they had grown up together as childhood friends. Risewood clarified the situation. They had been investigating Nicola, but it wasn't because of any crime. In fact, it was the opposite. He had defeated the current hero in a fair fight. Jessica was caught completely off guard. Risewood continued, explaining that Nicola hadn't just won. He had defeated the hero using only one finger. As their investigation went deeper, they also uncovered something else. Nicola had been taking down local bandits and collecting money from them. From Jessica's perspective, that sounded exactly like something he would do. But what came next hit her harder. That money hadn't been kept for himself. It had been going to a specific place, her mother's house. Jessica was stunned. Her mother, unemployed, had been living in poverty with her younger sister. Ever since Jessica was imprisoned and stopped sending money, they had nothing left. They had been struggling to survive, barely getting by, until Nicola stepped in and started supporting them. She couldn't accept it at first and accused Risewood of lying. But he stood firm, explaining that they had tracked the flow of money, which was exactly how they ended up reaching her. That realization forced Jessica to face something she had been avoiding. Back then, she had made a serious mistake. She had been in love with Jay and believed everything he did was right. Watching him fight, releasing overwhelming chi and putting on a display of strength, had completely drawn her in. But after he lost his power to the Demon Lord, everything changed. The man she once admired turned into someone she couldn't respect, chasing after distractions and losing focus. Looking back now, she could see that removing Nicola from the party had been the wrong decision. It took her this long to admit it. She wanted to apologize, hoping that if Risewood ever met Nicola, he could pass the message along. But Risewood didn't accept that. From his point of view, if she truly wanted to apologize, she should do it herself. Jessica was stuck, though. As a prisoner, she didn't have that option. That was exactly why Risewood had come. He was offering her a way out. If she could convince Nicola to join their side, they would grant her freedom. Jessica tried to understand what the general really wanted. From her point of view, it sounded like they were trying to recruit Nicola into the army. Risewood didn't deny that it would be beneficial, but he clarified that it wasn't the main goal. What they truly needed was for Nicola to remain within their country. At the moment, power was what the state lacked the most. Without it, even their armed forces would be unstable. An army couldn't hold together if powerful individuals were free to defeat its leaders whenever they wanted. Other nations had their own forms of strength. The Demon Lord's domain had the Demon Lord, and the Size Kingdom had the hero. Their country needed something similar, a force strong enough to act as a deterrent. Jessica understood what he was getting at. It came down to keeping the balance and maintaining peace through strength. Risewood confirmed that was exactly the reason they needed her help. They wanted her to convince Nicola to stay on their side. Jessica clenched her fist and made up her mind. She would do it. From what she knew, Nicola wasn't someone who sought conflict. He preferred a peaceful life, and she believed that would work in their favor. Risewood seemed satisfied with her answer. At that point, Jessica pointed out something important. If they were serious about this, they needed to control the spread of the news about Nicola defeating the hero. From her experience, Nicola wasn't the type who liked attention. Risewood agreed and took note of it. Jessica then pushed forward, asking to be taken to him right away. She was determined to speak with him personally and make it happen. Risewood accepted that and reminded her not to fail them. The scene shifted back to the Republic of Shanoa, at Satella's house. Nicola turned to Alice and told her it was time to move on to the next stage of her training. Up to that point, everything had been focused on hand-to-hand combat. Now, he wanted to take a more practical approach. Instead of just training in theory, it was time to apply those techniques in real situations. Alice tried to understand what that meant, thinking it might involve actually fighting people. Nicola clarified it by bringing up the idea of entering a dungeon. That way, she could test her skills against real monsters. Alice hesitated, remembering that entering a dungeon wasn't something just anyone could do. Normally, only registered adventurers were allowed. Nicola had already thought of that. He had taken care of the process and registered her through his own connections. That surprised her, since she didn't expect something like that to be possible through someone else. Nicola took it lightly, pointing out that he wouldn't have been able to do it back when he had no status. But now that he was a teacher, people trusted him more, and that made things like this easier to arrange. Nicola checked if Alice had any idea what a dungeon was like. From her side, all she knew came from books. Nicola gave a small smile, seeing that as a starting point. He explained it in a simple way. Dungeons were strange places scattered all over the world. They held treasures, but only for those willing to face the dangers inside. Monsters guarded those rewards, and many adventurers made their living by going in, fighting through, and claiming whatever they could find. There were all kinds of dungeons, each with different types of monsters. But one they were heading into was different. It was a private dungeon, and it only contained skeleton warriors. Standing outside, Alice noticed something odd. There were no other adventurers around. Nicola pointed out that it made sense since the place was privately owned. That cleared it up for her, but it still felt like a new experience. This was her first time actually entering a dungeon. Nicola told her to relax a bit. The dungeon was ranked E, meant for beginners. That eased her nerves a little. As they moved inside, it didn't take long before they ran into a skeleton warrior. Nicola noted how quick that was and pointed it out as her opponent. Alice wondered if monsters used chi the same way humans did. Nicola explained that not all of them did, but most humanoid monsters did. In terms of chi, this one was roughly on her level. She questioned whether she could actually beat it. Nicola broke it down for her. Skeleton warriors moved in simple, predictable patterns. If she just stood there doubting herself, nothing would change. With that in mind, Alice moved in. The skeleton attacked first, throwing a punch, but she avoided it. She followed up with a hook, then added a kick, and the skeleton went down. She stopped for a moment, surprised that she actually did it. Nicola pointed out that she handled it without hesitating. Alice smiled, admitting that she managed it by imagining the skeleton as Nicola, which made it easier for her to throw her strikes without holding back. That thought alone made Nicola pause for a second. Still, from his point of view, what mattered most was that she could act without second-guessing herself. As they kept walking, Alice started to notice something different about herself. Her chi had gone up. Nicola explained it in a straightforward way. Defeating monsters naturally increased chi, and that was common knowledge among adventurers. To Alice, it felt almost like discovering some hidden trick. Nicola didn't see it that way. Normally, training was still the more effective method, but since her chi was low to begin with, the effect just felt more noticeable for her. They continued moving forward, clearing one floor after another. Second floor, third floor, and eventually reaching the last one. By that point, Alice felt like it had all been easier than she expected. Nicola didn't let her relax. He pointed out that something stronger would appear on this floor, so lowering her guard wasn't an option. He was referring to a skeleton captain, a monster with around 3 times the chi of the regular skeleton warriors. He also reminded her that the orc she would face later had about 10 times the chi of a skeleton captain, just to give her a sense of the gap. Alice processed that quickly. If she struggled here, then she had no real chance in that future fight. Right then, a skeleton appeared in front of them. Alice assumed it was the skeleton captain, but Nicola corrected that immediately. This one was a skeleton general, a higher-ranked monster than what he had mentioned. That didn't make sense at first. Nicola thought it through and came to one conclusion. The monster had evolved. He explained that just like humans, monsters could also gain chi by defeating others. When they reached a certain level, they could evolve and increase their rank. It didn't happen often since monsters usually gain chi slowly, but it was still possible. He also considered another possibility. Someone might have forced this evolution artificially. Alice looked at the situation and asked if she should take it down. Nicola evaluated it and pointed out that the skeleton general had about 5 times her current chi. Even so, it was still weaker than the orc she would eventually face. From that, Alice understood what needed to be done. If she wanted to defeat that orc, she had to overcome this first. She accepted it and stepped forward, asking Nicola to watch her. He agreed. Alice then stood face to face with the skeleton general, ready to take it on. The skeleton general began releasing its chi, and Alice immediately felt the difference. The pressure coming from it was far beyond what she had faced before. Nicola watched closely and figured she already knew how to approach this kind of fight. Alice didn't hesitate. She moved in right away, dashing toward the skeleton. The moment it attacked, she avoided it, keeping her movements tight. Nicola reminded her to focus on evasion, but she already had that in mind and didn't need to hear it again. She tightened her fists and tried to strike back, but from Nicola's point of view, just dodging and throwing attacks like that wouldn't be enough. The gap in chi was too large. The skeleton general had far more, which meant its speed and power were on another level. That difference showed immediately. The skeleton landed a hit. Alice managed to block it with her arm, but the impact was too much. Her arm took serious damage. Nicola saw it clearly. It was a clean hit. Alice acknowledged it herself, realizing her arm was essentially broken. Nicola stepped in and called her back, preparing to use healing magic. Alice tried to push through it, saying she could still manage despite the pain. Nicola didn't see that lasting. The only reason she could still move was because of the adrenaline. Once that wore off, the pain would hit hard. He fixed her arm using healing magic and checked on her condition. The pain hadn't completely disappeared, but it was manageable enough for her to continue. That was all she needed. She stepped back into the fight, determined to finish it. Alice kept going, pushing herself against the skeleton general, but the strain started to show. She was getting exhausted. Nicola watched and decided that she had already reached the minimum level he wanted from her. It was time to end it. He told her to step back. Alice hesitated, surprised, but followed his instruction and moved aside. Nicola stepped forward, ready to show her something more. He made it clear through his actions that with the right approach, even someone facing an opponent 5 times stronger could still win. He moved in and delivered a precise kick to the skeleton's neck. Alice saw it happen clearly. The bone cracked from that single strike. Nicola showed her how it worked. By focusing all of his chi into one point, the attack became strong enough to break through even a tougher opponent. It wasn't about overwhelming strength. It was about how that strength was used. Nicola broke it down in a simple way for Alice. Against opponents like her, the kind who relied on speed and constant movement, the key was to limit their options. That meant reducing how much they could move. With both arms and both legs, an opponent had 4 possible angles to attack from. But once even one of those was taken out, like when he broke the skeleton's arm, their options dropped immediately. The skeleton charged at him, but Nicola handled it without any pressure. He avoided the attack easily, then stepped in with a counterpunch straight to its skull, shattering it on impact. Alice watched the whole thing and was clearly impressed. Nicola didn't take that too seriously and pointed out that it would be a problem if something like this was enough to amaze her. After all, she still had to face someone far stronger than this within a month. Alice accepted that and stayed focused, saying she would keep trying her best. At the same time, she realized something new about him. She hadn't expected him to use healing magic and wondered how skilled he actually was with it. Nicola didn't make a big deal out of it. From his point of view, it was just a practical skill, something useful to have when living the life of an adventurer. Nicola went on to explain that magic had a lot of practical uses. It could be used to blind opponents, hide oneself, or even change appearances entirely. From his experience, once someone got the hang of it, it became pretty easy to use. Learning different disciplines like that only made a person more versatile. Alice found that interesting and started to wonder just how flexible magic really was. Nicola was about to give her an example, but something else caught their attention first. They spotted Sat Ella walking inside the dungeon, which wasn't something they expected. It made them wonder what the principal was doing there. Nicola figured she might just be there to train or stretch a bit. Then he saw it as a good chance to demonstrate something in a more practical way. Without any warning, he used shape-shifting magic and took on Satella's exact appearance. Alice was impressed right away. From her perspective, there was no way to tell the difference between him and the real one. Nicola explained that this kind of magic only changed appearance. It didn't affect chi, strength, or any of the user's actual abilities. Alice then wondered what he planned to do while looking like that. Nicola had already decided. He was going to mess with his sister a bit. He walked up to Sat Ella while still disguised, catching her off guard. The moment she noticed, there was clear confusion. Then Nicola dropped the transformation, returning to normal. Sat Ella reacted right away, clearly not appreciating the surprise. Nicola didn't see the issue and questioned whether it was really that strange for him to be there. From her side, it didn't make much sense. He had already cleared this dungeon a long time ago, and she couldn't think of any real reason for him to come back. Nicola was caught off guard when Ella called him Nico. That name wasn't something he heard often anymore. From her side, it was just something that slipped out naturally, the way she used to call him back when they were kids. She didn't dwell on it and shifted the focus, wondering what brought him there in the first place. Nicola explained that he had brought his disciple along for training, which surprised her a bit. As he started to explain things further, Ella already seemed to have figured it out. From her perspective, he was putting his student through the basics of martial arts by having her fight monsters. Nicola acknowledged that part, but he also pointed out there was still the question of whether those techniques would hold up against actual people. Ella saw where he was going with that and suggested a more direct approach. If he was thinking along those lines, it would make more sense to find opponents who were actually worth fighting. She even mentioned that he could reach out to his usual contacts, since they would know if any troublemakers had shown up recently. While that kind of thing technically fell under her responsibility, she didn't seem to mind letting him handle it. After that, she wrapped things up and headed off, leaving them to continue. Nicola watched her for a moment as she walked away. The scene shifted to a forest area. Nicola and Alice arrived at a house tucked away among the trees. Nicola called out from outside, checking if anyone was there. Not long after, a man stepped out and immediately recognized him as Master Nicola. Once they entered the house, Alice looked around and wondered if the man they just met was a bandit. From what he shared, that used to be true. He had been one before, but things changed after Nicola destroyed their hideout. That moment pushed him to cut ties with that life completely. Now, he made a living in a different way. Instead of committing crimes, he sold information about other bandits. Knights and guards were willing to pay well for that kind of intel, and from his experience, he was earning even more than he did back when he was involved in banditry. Nicola didn't waste time and got straight to the point. He wanted to know if there were any groups recently causing serious trouble. The man, now known as Renmar, had plenty to share. From what he knew, there were groups dealing in illegal drugs, others attacking merchants on the roads, and even worse, a band of criminals involved in slave trading. Renmar added that the last reports mentioned they were heavily dealing with elven slaves. That detail stood out. Nicola immediately asked where they were operating. Renmar didn't give it away for free and made it clear that kind of information had a price. It would cost 5 gold coins. Nicola paid without hesitation and made it clear he wanted every detail, nothing left out. Renmar didn't hold back, knowing better than to hide anything from him. Renmar went on to explain where the group usually operated and laid out all the details for them. With that information in hand, Nicola and Alice made their way toward the location. As they moved through the area, Nicola kept an eye out and figured they were getting close based on what Renmar had told them. He recalled that the group consisted of around 10 bandits, all of them fairly capable in their own right. He reminded Alice of the purpose of this trip. This wasn't just about tracking them down. It was about giving her real, hands-on experience by facing actual opponents. Before anything started, he pointed out 2 important things she needed to keep in mind. First, she should focus on using grapples and holds. Second, once she secured a grip, she shouldn't hesitate to break bones or dislocate joints. Alice paid close attention, taking in every detail. Nicola connected it back to what he had taught her earlier. Limiting an opponent's options was key, especially against someone stronger. Trying to break limbs with strikes alone would be difficult in that situation, which made grappling the more reliable choice. Alice understood the approach and accepted it. From her side, once she managed to secure a hold, she was ready to follow through without hesitation. A few hours later, Nicola and Alice reached the bandits' hideout. Nicola suggested going in through the back, already thinking about where a hidden entrance might be. From his experience dealing with bandits, those kinds of entrances weren't that hard to spot once you knew what to look for. After moving a barrel aside, a wooden door built into the floor came into view. They went in and were immediately met with a scene inside. There were bandits gathered, along with people who clearly looked like they had been taken against their will. Alice quickly noticed among them a dark elf. To her, it didn't matter whether they were dark elves or high elves. They were all still her fellow countrymen. One of the bandits noticed their presence and questioned who they were. Nicola didn't waste time and left the situation to Alice, pointing out a specific target for her. She followed his lead and focused on the bald one. As for the rest, she looked to Nicola for how to handle them. The bandits didn't hesitate and rushed forward, trying to deal with the intruders. But Nicola moved first. In a split second, he knocked out 2 of them with clean strikes to their faces. It happened so fast that Alice barely had time to process it. Just like that, 2 were already down. Nicola kept things simple. With the others out, only the bald one was left, and no one would interfere now. Alice stepped forward, ready to face him. The bald bandit looked at the situation and found it strange that they would go this far just to let her gain experience. Still, he tried to turn it into something that worked in his favor. He pushed the idea that if he managed to beat her, they would let him go. Nicola didn't object to that and let it play out. The bald bandit approached Alice, confident in his advantage. From his perspective, his chi was about 3 times hers, and that alone made him think she stood no chance. But before he could act on that confidence, Alice moved first. She grabbed his arm and snapped it without hesitation. The reaction was immediate, pain hitting him hard. Anger took over and he tried to strike back, but Alice followed up right away, landing a kick that dropped him completely. Nicola watched it happen and acknowledged that she handled it well, especially since she didn't hesitate at all. Alice paused for a moment, realizing something about herself. Even she hadn't expected that she could act that decisively without holding back. While Nicola was helping the captives by removing the ropes from their hands, he kept things simple from his point of view. There was no need to overthink what just happened. If bandits were left alone, they would just keep committing crimes, so dealing with them properly was the only way to make them stop. Alice then turned her attention to one of the dark elves and wondered if they would be harmed further. Instead of gratitude, the man reacted differently. He recognized her as a high elf princess, which only made his expression harder. Rather than easing up, he showed open resentment. From his perspective, being rescued by her wasn't something he could accept. That reaction caught both Nicola and Alice off guard. The dark elf didn't hold back. He blamed her and her people for what had happened to his kind. In his eyes, the situation with dark elves being sold as slaves traced back to the high elves taking their land. Because of that, there was no forgiveness left. He brought up their chieftain, Cone, believing that one day he would reclaim the territory that had been lost. He spoke with certainty, convinced that things would turn around. He also mentioned someone close to Cone, someone who had gone missing but was known as a rare talent, someone exceptional. From his perspective, someone like Alice didn't have what it took to restore anything. To him, she wasn't fit to carry that responsibility. Alice took in everything he said and didn't push back against it. Instead, she accepted it, seeing herself as someone who hadn't lived up to what was expected of her. Nicola didn't let that continue. He stepped in and struck the dark elf on the head, cutting off the tension. The man reacted, confused about why he had been hit. Nicola didn't dwell on it and flipped the situation back on him, making it clear that if things were taken to extremes, leaving him there or treating him the same way he feared wasn't out of the question. The dark elves were left stunned by what Nicola said. From his side, he wasn't joking at all. He made it clear that there were nobles out there who would pay a lot for someone like them, and he wasn't exaggerating that reality. Alice stepped in and called out to him, trying to stop things from going further. She made it clear that she wasn't hurt by what had been said. But Nicola didn't back down. From his point of view, people who reacted like that needed to be corrected, or they would stay that way for the rest of their lives. He acknowledged that the high elves did play a role in what had happened to the dark elves. Alice didn't deny that. She accepted that there was truth to it, but that was exactly why she wanted to help. To her, that responsibility mattered. The dark elf spoke up again, making it clear they didn't want her help at all. But Alice didn't let that stop her. She wasn't doing it for their approval. From her perspective, this was something she chose for herself. That was why she wanted to grow stronger, so she could one day save them and restore what had been lost. Sometime later, Alice approached Nicola and asked if they could take a break from training. Nicola didn't have an issue with that. From his point of view, he had already taught her the basics he wanted her to learn. He then wondered what she planned to do next. Alice had already decided. She was going to get stronger on her own and come back before the tournament. Before leaving, she made one last request. She needed his help to gain access to dungeons, especially ones where skeleton generals appeared. Alice went back into the dungeon, facing skeleton after skeleton with one thing in mind: she needed to get stronger. After parting ways with Nicola, she didn't stay in one place. She traveled from area to area, clearing multiple dungeons along the way. There were times she couldn't even make it to the next location before nightfall, so she ended up resting inside the dungeons themselves. Weeks passed like that, and eventually, she crossed paths with the skeleton general again. By that point, she saw it almost like a personal rival. She fought them over and over, sharpening her martial arts each time. After one of those battles, she stood over it, recognizing that it marked the 100th skeleton general she had taken down. She finished it with a clean kick to the head. Even after all that, she didn't feel satisfied. While moving deeper into the dungeon, she kept thinking that it still wasn't enough. She made her way to the lowest floor, where she spotted someone else, a woman with a sword fighting off skeletons. Alice paused to observe. The swordswoman moved with focus, striking the skeletons precisely at their weak points. From what Alice could see, she didn't seem to need any help. But then a skeleton appeared behind the woman. Alice reacted immediately, warning her about the attack. The swordswoman turned in time and struck back, breaking the skeleton's skull in one motion. The moment passed, and the swordswoman realized how close that had been. She showed appreciation for the assist and took note of Alice's presence. Alice introduced herself as someone still new to adventuring. The swordswoman revealed her own name, Jessica. She acknowledged the help and saw it as something she owed. Alice brushed it off and didn't make a big deal out of it. To her, the skeletons were just acting like cowards, attacking from behind. Jessica seemed to agree, though there was something off in her expression. Alice noticed it and wondered if something was bothering her. Jessica didn't dwell on it and treated it as a moment of distraction. Instead, she shifted the focus and wondered what brought Alice into a place like this. From Alice's side, the answer was simple. She was there to get stronger. She also wondered if Jessica was there for the same reason. Jessica saw that as part of it. Alice then looked at her more closely and couldn't help but admire her skill. Her swordsmanship stood out, to the point that it reminded her of someone well known from the Sai's kingdom. Jessica was caught off guard for a moment. Alice tried to connect the dots, thinking she might be that same well-known Jessica. But Jessica brushed that off and made it clear she was just another person with the same name. Instead, she focused on showing her appreciation. From her side, she wanted to repay the help she received. Alice didn't make a big deal out of it and felt that just knowing it was enough. But Jessica didn't leave it at that. She insisted on doing something in return and mentioned that her mother's house was nearby. It felt like a good chance to treat her properly. By the time night came, they arrived at the house. Jessica spoke confidently about the food her mother made, saying it was something worth looking forward to. She asked Alice to wait outside for a bit while she went in first, and Alice agreed. Jessica stepped inside and greeted her mother right away. Her sudden appearance caught her mother completely by surprise. It took a moment for her to process that it was really her daughter standing there. Jessica confirmed it without hesitation. Her mother, still trying to take it all in, wondered where she had been all this time. Jessica apologized and focused on seeing her safe and doing well. She then asked about Maria. Her mother explained that she had gone to the capital to attend school. Hearing that, Jessica felt a mix of relief and curiosity, thinking about how much her younger sister must have grown. She mentioned that she had brought some things back with her, wanting to give them to her mother. But her mother didn't accept it right away. Even though she appreciated the thought, she said she didn't need it anymore. That surprised Jessica, especially considering how things were before. She asked if her mother had really managed without struggling. Her mother didn't hide the truth. Back then, things had been extremely hard. They had no food, no medicine, and no real way to get by. At one point, they were close to being forced into desperate choices just to survive. But things changed when someone stepped in and helped them out. Jessica immediately thought of Nicola, and her mother confirmed it without hesitation. It was him. He was the one who stepped in and saved them when they had nothing. Her mother explained how far his help went. He didn't just give them enough to survive day by day. He made sure they had proper support and even enough saved up so Maria could attend school in the capital. Hearing all of that, Jessica was hit with something she hadn't expected. She started to question how her mother would react if she knew the truth about what happened in the past. When she brought it up, her mother was clearly taken aback and immediately wanted to understand what she meant. Jessica didn't hold anything back. She went through everything that had happened and laid it all out. By the time she finished, her mother was left in shock. From her mother's perspective, it was hard to accept. She couldn't understand how Jessica could have done something like that. Jessica admitted that she regretted it deeply, fully aware now of how wrong it had been. Her mother didn't soften her stance. She made it clear that she hadn't raised her to act that way. To her, their entire family owed Nicola more than they could ever repay. Jessica realized how much she had overlooked. She hadn't known any of this before. It never crossed her mind that Nicola would be supporting her family while she was gone. But her mother corrected that misunderstanding. Nicola hadn't just started helping recently. He had been looking after them long before everything fell apart. Back when Jessica and Maria were still children, their situation had been far worse than she remembered. With no stable work, their mother had no choice but to beg on the streets just to put food on the table. That was when Nicola stepped in. Even at a young age, he offered her mother work at his family's mansion. He didn't want Jessica and her sister to grow up suffering like that. Without that help, their mother admitted things would have gone down a much darker path. She would have been forced to sell Jessica just to survive. That realization hit Jessica hard. She hadn't known any of this. Her mother went on, explaining that Nicola had kept everything quiet on purpose. He didn't want it to create any distance or awkwardness in their friendship. From her perspective, everything Jessica had growing up, her clothes, her education, was tied back to Nicola's support. Even the swordsmanship she had always taken pride in wasn't as simple as she believed. Jessica couldn't accept it right away. From her understanding, her instructor had chosen her because of her talent. That was what she had always believed. But her mother didn't agree with that version of things. To her, it didn't make sense. A knight from the kingdom wouldn't normally take in a poor girl from the slums as a disciple without a reason behind it. Out of nowhere, her mother grabbed her arm, clearly unable to hold back her frustration anymore. From her perspective, she couldn't accept having a daughter who acted like that, and she pushed Jessica out of the house without hesitation. Outside, Alice had been waiting, picking up on the noise from inside and wondering what was going on. Then the door suddenly opened, and Jessica was forced out. Her mother shut her out completely, leaving things in a harsh state. Alice was caught off guard and tried to understand what had just happened. Jessica didn't answer. She just turned and started walking away without saying anything. Alice followed after her, not leaving her alone. After catching up, she quietly offered her a handkerchief, recognizing that whatever had just happened must have been heavy on her. Jessica stopped walking. Then everything she had been holding in broke out. She couldn't keep it together anymore and started crying openly. From her side, it felt like she had lost everything: her family, her home, the people she once called friends, even the pride she had in her swordsmanship. Looking at it that way, it felt like there was nothing left for her to hold on to. All that remained was the question of how she had ended up like this. Alice stayed with her and held her hands, not pulling away. As she looked at Jessica, she realized something quietly. Everyone carried their own struggles, and in their own way, they were all dealing with something heavy. On the day of the tournament, Alice went to meet her teacher, Nicola. When he saw her, he was honestly surprised. In such a short time, she had clearly changed a lot. From her side, she didn't hide how tough it had been to get there. The progress didn't come easy. Nicola figured out what she had been doing right away, realizing she must have been clearing dungeon after dungeon. That was exactly what she had been doing. She had taken down 100 skeleton generals along the way. Hearing that, Nicola recognized how much effort that would have taken. Alice didn't sugarcoat it either. It had been rough. There were times she ran out of food and had no choice but to survive by eating monsters, figuring out how to prepare them properly just to keep going. That part even caught Nicola off guard, but from her perspective, all of it paid off. She had grown stronger, and now she could say that with confidence. She also mentioned that during her travels, she had met someone new. She had made a friend and wanted to introduce that person to him. Nicola didn't have any issue with that and was open to meeting her. Still, the main focus was the tournament. Her match was set for later that evening, so there was still time to prepare. Nicola had already taken the initiative to gather as much information as possible about her opponent. From what he knew, the matchup wasn't in her favor physically. Orcs had a clear advantage in strength and build, but beyond that, the real issue was the gap in chi. Even after all her progress, her opponent still had around 5 times more chi than she did. Alice looked at the situation and felt that the way it was being explained made it seem like she had no real chance. But Nicola didn't agree with that conclusion. From his perspective, she could still win. It would come down to how well she managed her chi, how she handled her dodges, and how she used her hand-to-hand techniques. He wanted to know if she believed she could actually pull it off. Alice didn't hesitate. She carried herself with confidence, knowing what she had already accomplished. Taking down 100 skeleton generals on her own wasn't something she overlooked. Nicola picked up on that mindset and approved of it. He reminded her not to let her guard down this time. Unlike the skeletons she had been fighting, her opponent was fully aware and capable of thinking. Alice understood that clearly. Nicola added another important point. She needed to make sure none of the orc's punches landed. Based on what he had seen before, that kind of power could easily leave serious damage, even carving into the arena itself. Alice took that advice seriously, recognizing how useful that information would be. Nicola noticed something else in her approach. She had started to adopt the mindset he had been teaching, the kind that focused on caution and strategy over pride. From his point of view, she had picked it up well. Alice didn't deny that and saw it as something she learned directly from him. With that, she stayed confident in her goal. She was set on defeating the orc. Inside the arena, the crowd had already gathered. People were talking among themselves, weighing her chances. Some wanted her to win, but many doubted it, thinking the difference in strength was too much to overcome. Among the spectators, Iris listened in, clearly uneasy as she thought about Alice stepping into that fight. Nicola looked over the crowd and noticed something right away. A lot of Alice's classmates from the 9th class had shown up to support her. That alone was unexpected. What surprised him even more was seeing Iris allow Alice to step into the arena, considering she was supposed to be her bodyguard. From Alice's side, it hadn't been easy. Iris had strongly opposed the idea, but in the end, she couldn't override Alice's decision. Nicola also picked up on another detail. The 1st class was there too, but their attention was clearly on the orc. Alice mentioned that she had heard something about it. Their class was set to go on a trip to an island owned by the school after the tournament, and how they would be treated there depended on the outcome of this match. Nicola understood what that meant. Losing wasn't really an option if she wanted to keep enjoying that kind of lifestyle. With that in mind, he told her to move forward and stick to the plan they had discussed. Alice accepted that and stepped onto the stage. As soon as she entered, the crowd reacted loudly. Now she stood face to face with the orc girl, someone who still had a clear advantage in raw power. The orc girl looked at her and didn't see much difference compared to before. From Alice's side, that was expected. She had intentionally kept her chi suppressed. Nearby, The orc's teacher looked around, clearly noticing Nicola's absence. He didn't take it well, especially after feeling mocked by Nicola's approach. From his perspective, this match was a chance to settle that, expecting his student to win and force Nicola into humiliation. The orc girl seemed on board with that idea, seeing it as something worth looking forward to. With both sides ready, attention shifted to the start of the match. The orc girl signaled her readiness, and Ella stepped in to lay out the rules. Everything was allowed: magic, weapons, any method. The match would end only if one side gave up or could no longer continue. With that, the signal was given, and the fight began. The fight started, and right away the orc girl unleashed her chi. The difference was obvious. Her presence alone showed how much stronger she was compared to Alice. She carried herself with confidence, clearly convinced that Alice wouldn't be able to keep up. From her point of view, the gap in chi was enough to decide the outcome. She didn't even see a need to rush things. Alice, on the other hand, stayed calm and focused, not backing down from the pressure in front of her. Instead of reacting to the intimidation, she held her ground and looked straight at her opponent. Then she shifted the situation. She made it seem like there was something behind the orc girl, something worth checking. The orc didn't fall for it at first, already aware of the kind of tactics Alice had been taught. Tricks like that weren't supposed to work on her. But in that same moment, something changed. She felt a sudden surge of killing intent from behind. It was sharp enough to break her focus. Without thinking, she turned to look. What she saw was Nicola, standing there with a serious presence, releasing a strong wave of chi. That moment of distraction was all it took. Alice didn't hesitate. The instant the orc's attention shifted, she moved in. Closing the distance quickly, she grabbed her arm and slammed her straight into the ground before she could react. The orc girl cried out in pain as the impact took its toll, her arm clearly dislocated. The students watching the match were caught off guard, shocked by how quickly things had turned. From her side, the orc girl couldn't accept what just happened. She saw it as nothing more than a cheap move, something beneath her standards. But Alice didn't waver. The way she fought came directly from what she had been taught, and she stood by it. To her, the situation was simple. The orc had already known what kind of tactics they used and still didn't prepare for it. On top of that, the opening only existed because she had let her guard down in the middle of the fight. The orc girl realized it herself. She had been completely led into that situation, falling for it despite knowing better. It also crossed her mind that something felt off earlier, especially with her teacher not being present. At that moment, Nicholas stepped in and brought up what had been said before the match. The idea that if Alice lost, he would be forced into an apology. He flipped that around. If the orc girl lost instead, then she would be the one apologizing, not just to them, but to every student she had pushed around. That shift changed the atmosphere instantly. The students in the arena reacted, voices rising as they got behind Alice, cheering her on and wanting to see the orc girl taken down. The orc girl's anger boiled over, her focus shifting straight toward Nicola. But instead of backing off, he pushed her further, bringing up her strength in those punches people talked about, the kind that could leave craters behind. That only made her more aggressive. From her side, there was no doubt about her power. Alice watched closely, staying composed. Then she centered herself and started releasing her chi. The shift was immediate, and it caught the orc girl off guard. The difference from before was obvious. The orc couldn't ignore it. From her perspective, it felt like she had been misled. It looked like Alice had been hiding her true strength all along, pretending to be weaker back then. But that wasn't the case. Alice hadn't been pretending. 3 months ago, she really was that weak. Back then, just standing in front of that level of chi would have been enough to bring her down. Now, things were different. She had changed. She wasn't the same person anymore, and she wasn't someone who needed protection. The orc girl didn't wait any longer and threw a punch, fueled by frustration. But Alice had already entered her rhythm. She moved cleanly, avoiding the attack without any wasted motion. The gap in control started to show. The orc's strength was still there, but her hits weren't landing. Alice kept her focus, reading each movement and staying just out of reach. Then she countered, targeting the orc's leg with a precise kick. The orc noticed it but didn't slow down, launching a series of punches in response. Still, none of them connected. Alice slipped through each one and followed up with another strike to the leg. At that point, the orc girl paused. No matter how strong her attacks were, they meant nothing if they couldn't land. From the side, Nicola watched and pointed out the same thing in his own way. All that power didn't matter if it never reached its target. The orc girl snapped back at Nicola, clearly irritated, and immediately went on the offensive again, throwing another punch at Alice. But Alice stayed composed and simply stepped back, letting the attack pass. Without hesitation, she moved into a counter, starting with an uppercut. The orc girl reacted to that and prepared to block it, expecting that kind of strike. But what actually landed was different. A straight punch slipped through and hit her clean on the face. The impact shook her. Her body trembled from the damage, and her legs started to give out as she dropped toward one knee. Frustration took over as she tried to understand why she couldn't win against Alice. From Alice's perspective, the answer was clear. The reason she could avoid every attack came down to one thing. She already knew what kind of moves were coming. That didn't make sense to the orc girl at first. She couldn't see what Alice was getting at. But Alice broke it down. She hadn't just relied on instinct. She had studied her opponent beforehand, going over her past matches carefully. From what she saw, every one of the orc girl's victories followed the same pattern. There were no kicks involved at all. That detail mattered. The orc girl tried to justify it, but before she could finish that thought, Alice had already figured it out. Kicks weren't her strength. Even so, with her level of chi, even one properly used kick would be dangerous. Alice pointed out something else. It should have felt strange from the start. Nicola had been pushing her to use those powerful punches, almost inviting it. In a real fight, no one would encourage their opponent to rely on their strongest move like that. That realization hit the orc girl. She had been guided into a pattern without even noticing it. Alice laid it out clearly. The situation had been shaped to limit the orc girl's choices from the start. It came down to two options: use kicks, which she wasn't comfortable with, or rely on punches, which she preferred. In the end, she naturally chose the one she was better at, and that decision played right into the setup. The orc girl began to understand what had happened. Alice continued, pointing out that the real turning point was her arms. Even if her options had been narrowed down to just punches, having full use of both arms would have made her attacks too fast to handle. In that state, Alice wouldn't have been able to keep up. That was when it fully sank in. If she hadn't let her guard down earlier and lost the use of her arm, the outcome could have been different. With that realization, she accepted it. The fight was over. She gave up and acknowledged the result. The crowd responded right away, voices rising as they cheered for Alice. Soon after, the principal confirmed it, declaring Alice as the winner. After the match between Alice and the orc girl, the scene shifted to Shanoa Town. Nicola stood around, already noticing that she was late. He found himself wondering how things ended up like this, especially since he usually wouldn't be spending his weekend wandering around the market. He recalled how it started. After winning the match, Alice had asked him for a reward. At first, it sounded like she was asking for money, which didn't sit well with him considering his situation. But that wasn't what she meant. What she actually wanted was simple. She wanted to spend time walking around town with him. Looking around, Nicola couldn't help but notice the atmosphere. There were couples everywhere. It only made him let out a quiet sigh. Alice eventually showed up and called out to him, apologizing for being late. From Nicola's side, he pointed out that she really did take her time, especially making her teacher wait like that. The delay came down to Iris taking her time fixing her hair. Nicola looked at her and realized that Iris had styled it. Alice seemed happy about it, seeing it as a kind of disguise. But from Nicola's point of view, it wasn't convincing at all. Anyone paying attention would see through it right away. That reaction surprised her, since she had more confidence in it. Nicola didn't see the point of relying on something like that and suggested she should focus on learning shape-shifting magic instead. Alice didn't agree with that approach. She wasn't comfortable with that kind of magic and felt like it wasn't right to alter the body she was born with. Nicola didn't see that mindset helping her get stronger. She didn't fully reject the idea of them. If she really needed it, she would use it, but not just for casual use. With that aside, Nicola asked where they were heading. Alice already had something in mind and hinted that it was somewhere he would enjoy. As they walked through town, Nicola tried to guess, even jokingly thinking it might be another bandit hideout. Alice didn't give anything away. While they walked, people around them started to notice. Some were commenting on how they looked together, pointing out Nicola's appearance and comparing it to Alice's. Nicola brushed it off, telling her not to pay attention to it. From his perspective, physical build wasn't everything. Alice didn't fully appreciate that comment, feeling like it didn't really help. After passing through another part of town, she finally revealed what she had planned. There was a crowd gathered ahead, cheering loudly. When they reached the area, it became clear what it was. Alice had brought him to a wrestling event, complete with betting and a lively crowd. Nicola didn't expect to see something like this and was caught off guard by the wrestling event. He looked into it right away, wondering what the reward was. From what Alice gathered, the prize was a rare grimoire from an eastern land. On top of that, the entry fee was just 1 gold coin. That immediately caught Nicola's interest. A grimoire like that could easily sell for 100 gold coins or more, making the whole thing hard to ignore. His attention then shifted to the current champion. The masked woman known as Rise had an impressive record, holding 98 consecutive victories. Even opponents with larger builds hadn't been able to break her streak. Nicola watched closely, trying to gauge her strength and wondering how strong her chi actually was. Alice pointed out that the event had specific rules. Chi output was kept at a standardized level to prevent serious injuries caused by differences in strength. Strikes to the face were also restricted. As they observed, one of the challengers rushed in and threw a punch, but it didn't land. He followed up with a kick, But Rise avoided it just as easily. She moved cleanly, staying out of reach every time. While watching the match, Alice admitted something to Nicola. The main reason she had brought him there was for him to see Rise's technique in action. From her point of view, it could be useful for her own growth. The fight continued, with the challenger throwing a series of punches, but none of them connected. Confusion started to show in his movements as he couldn't understand why everything was missing. Then Rise closed the distance, grabbed his arm, and locked it into a submission. That ended it. The challenger had no choice but to give up. Alice compared what she saw to what Nicola had taught her, noticing the similarity. Nicola agreed and found himself curious about where Rise had learned those techniques. Seeing the opportunity, he told Alice to enter the event. From his perspective, fighting someone like that would be a valuable experience. Alice didn't hesitate for long and accepted the idea. She stepped onto the stage with confidence while Nicola stayed nearby, watching closely. Alice showed proper respect before the match, and Rise acknowledged it. From Rise's side, there was a clear sense of excitement, especially at the chance to face another woman in the ring. Alice was caught off guard by Rise's reaction. From Rise's side, there was clear excitement at the situation. Reaching her 100th opponent and finally facing another woman was something she had been looking forward to for a long time. To her, it wasn't just about being pleased. It was something she genuinely enjoyed. Up until now, all her matches had been against older men or heavily built fighters, and she had grown tired of that kind of environment. Facing another woman felt completely different. Alice didn't fully understand at first and tried to read what Rise was feeling, but Rise made it clear through her energy alone that this match meant something special to her. She didn't want to waste any time. She moved first, dashing forward and launching a high kick. Alice reacted immediately and blocked it cleanly. The impact staggered Rise for a moment, and Alice followed up with a punch to her stomach. That caught Rise's attention right away. From her perspective, that exchange wasn't something just anyone could pull off. The way Alice handled the kick and transitioned into a counter showed a level of control and awareness that stood out. Alice didn't expect that kind of recognition, but it was clear that her movements had already revealed her background. From the sidelines, Nicola watched with interest. This was shaping up to be a fight worth seeing. Rise adjusted her stance, now taking Alice more seriously. She had faced many opponents before, but this felt different. Fighting someone with proper martial training brought a new kind of tension into the match. Alice could feel that shift as well. Nicola stepped in with a quick reminder. Based on what he had seen earlier, Rise's strength lay in grappling, using holds and throws to control her opponents. Getting caught in that would end things quickly. Alice understood the risk. To deal with that, she needed to keep her distance while still landing effective strikes. With that in mind, both fighters focused on each other, locking their gaze as the fight moved into a more serious phase. Alice moved first, closing the distance quickly. Rise didn't expect that kind of approach, but she handled it well, blocking every punch and kick that came her way without much trouble. From Rise's side, she saw her opening and went for it, stepping in to grab Alice. But Alice reacted just as fast, striking her arms to stop the attempt. Even so, Rise adjusted immediately and managed to catch both of Alice's hands. That moment caught Nicola's attention. Rise had secured the grip almost instantly. Now face to face, Rise shifted into control, clearly seeing this as the point where things would turn in her favor. But something else was happening at the same time. The damage from Alice's earlier strikes was starting to build up. Alice picked up on it. Without wasting the chance, she twisted Rise's arm and transitioned smoothly into a lock, forcing her into a submission. The hold was tight, and Rise felt the strain right away. There was no way to push through it. With no options left, she gave up, and Alice released her grip. The crowd responded immediately, cheering for Alice's victory. After the match, Rise acknowledged her strength, recognizing what she had just experienced. From her perspective, Alice's training stood out, and it made her curious about who had taught her. Alice saw it the same way and recognized Rise's skill as well, wondering about her background. Rise traced her own style back to her master, someone she saw as similar in nature to Nicola. From what she knew, that person was currently in the Elven territories, involved in a war. Hearing that caught Alice off guard. She hadn't been aware of any conflict in her homeland. Rise found that strange, considering Alice's position. She would have expected her to already know what was happening, but from Alice's side, it wasn't surprising. Information like that wasn't something her father usually shared with her. Rise handed over the prize to Alice, hoping that the grimoire would be useful for her moving forward. She acknowledged the match and saw it as a solid fight. Alice returned the sentiment, recognizing the effort on both sides. After that, Alice and Nicola walked away from the arena together. Nicola pointed out that she had already accomplished her goal by defeating the orc, and he wondered if she still planned to continue training under him. From Alice's side, there was no hesitation. She wanted to keep going and become even stronger. More than that, she had a clear goal in mind. She wanted to reach a level where she could stand beside him. Nicola took that in and showed a quiet approval. From his perspective, if that was her aim, then continuing as his disciple made sense. A few days later, the scene shifted to a beach filled with students enjoying the water. While everyone else was swimming and having fun, Nicola stayed under an umbrella, taking it easy. Sitting there, he found it a bit strange how things turned out, realizing that he was actually acting like a proper teacher now. After the tournament, the orc girl had apologized to the ninth class. That alone helped to ease the tension between the two groups. On top of that, the teacher of the first class ended up resigning after his student lost to Alice. Because of that situation, Nicola was put in charge of watching over the first class during this trip as well. Looking around, he noticed how popular the orc girl had become. Meanwhile, his attention shifted to Alice. Compared to everyone else, she looked thin and delicate, and it didn't seem like she was getting much attention. From his perspective, she needed to build more strength, and he started thinking that he would have to push her training further. Alice approached him and wanted to know what he thought about her swimsuit. Nicola gave a straightforward answer, seeing nothing wrong with it. At that moment, Iris stepped in and called out to Alice, clearly trying to keep her distance from Nicola. Alice didn't like that attitude and told her not to be disrespectful. Iris ended up apologizing, though it was obvious she still didn't like him. Even so, Iris acknowledged something important. She recognized that Nicola had helped make Alice stronger. After that, she walked away. Alice felt the need to apologize for Iris's behavior, but Nicola brushed it off, not taking it seriously. He then asked about their relationship. From Alice's side, Iris wasn't just someone close, she had been her best friend since childhood. Nicola followed up, wondering if she had been acting as her bodyguard for that long. Alice explained more about Iris's background. She came from the royal lineage of the Dark Elves, a line that had been nearly wiped out during the last Great War. That made Iris the princess of the Dark Elves. Nicola recognized the story, recalling that the Dark Elven princess had gone missing. Alice confirmed that most of the royal family had indeed been executed. Alice explained that only Iris's half-brother, Coln, had been spared. That was only possible because his mother pushed for peace. However, Iris's own mother had been one of the leaders supporting war, which placed Iris in a dangerous position. She had originally been marked for execution along with the rest of her lineage. That was when Alice's family stepped in. They took Iris in and spread the story that she had gone missing, protecting her from being hunted down. From Alice's point of view, Iris had done nothing wrong and didn't deserve that fate. Nicola listened and brought up a thought, questioning whether Alice had ever considered the possibility that Iris might betray her one day. Alice didn't take that well and refused to accept that idea, even coming from him. Seeing that reaction, Nicola dropped the topic and acknowledged it without pushing further. Right then, Ella arrived with urgent news. Something had happened. Nicola immediately picked up on the seriousness of it. Ella explained that there were intruders on the island, putting the entire place at risk. That caught Nicola off guard. He couldn't understand who would be bold enough to attack a private island owned by Shanoa Academy. Ella clarified that the attackers were demi-human mercenaries. Nicola tried to figure out their objective. Ella pointed out that the island housed a library archive filled with rare and valuable books on military arts from all over the world. That was likely what they were after. Hearing that, Nicola let out a quiet breath and shifted into action. Ella asked him to guard the library, while she would handle protecting the students. She then instructed Alice to evacuate immediately and told Nicola to escort her. Nicola accepted the plan without hesitation. Alice looked uneasy as she glanced at the others before leaving. As night fell, Nicola stood on the stairs, thinking over the situation. He wondered if leaving the students under Satella's care had really been the right call. Not long after, the door opened. Alice returned, bringing him dinner. Nicola accepted the food without hesitation, already feeling hungry. Alice mentioned that she had prepared it herself and hoped it would suit his taste. As he started eating, she watched closely, clearly waiting for his reaction. From Nicola's side, the food was simple, just grilled fish. Alice admitted that she had been learning how to cook, though grilling was still the only thing she could do properly for now. Even so, she planned to keep improving, just like she had done with martial arts. As they continued, Alice reflected on her progress. The more she grew stronger, the more she realized just how far ahead Nicola was. That led her to wonder what pushed him to reach that level. Nicola answered in a straightforward way. His strength came from wanting to overcome something from his past. He had been betrayed by his former party, and in his mind, it happened because he wasn't strong enough back then. If he had been stronger, things would have turned out differently. That experience shaped his goal. He wanted to reach a point where he could never be defeated and never be betrayed again. Alice listened and saw things differently. From her perspective, he was already strong enough, possibly even stronger than the current hero. Nicola took that in and acknowledged it. Before they parted, he reminded her that training would start early the next day, so she should rest. Alice agreed and headed back to her room. Left alone, Nicola reflected on the moment. Having someone like her around to lift his mood wasn't a bad thing. Later that night, the atmosphere around the students was still lively. Many of them were chatting, even talking about how leaving the ninth class in charge of the kitchen turned out better than expected. But then something shifted. One of the students started noticing something off, and soon others felt it too. Their bodies began to tremble without control, and a strange uneasiness spread among them. And it didn't take long before they noticed someone outside. Moments later, a man stepped into the room, catching everyone by surprise. Even so, he seemed almost amused that they hadn't collapsed from fear. From his perspective, it didn't matter much anyway. What came next was clear: he intended to wipe them out, and if they thought about running, they were free to try, though it wouldn't change anything. Elsewhere, Nicola felt something strange in the air. Not long after, a scream reached him. It immediately put him on alert, but he recalled the plan. Ella had taken charge of protecting the students while he guarded the library. Still, the situation didn't sit right with him. It felt like the priorities had been flipped, as if the books mattered more than the students. Before he could dwell on it further, the door opened. Someone had come to him. The man who entered had a rough, almost pirate-like appearance. He looked Nicola over and tried to figure out if he was part of the academy staff. Nicola didn't take that question seriously, making it clear he didn't look like some guard assigned to watch over books. The man didn't argue with that and admitted that Nicola didn't exactly give off a trustworthy vibe either. Without wasting time, he moved closer. Nicola cut straight to the point, assuming the man was there for the library. But that wasn't the case. The real target was him. From the intruder's side, the mission was simple. Their group had come for the elven princess, and Nicola was just someone standing in the way. Removing him was part of the job. That raised another question in Nicola's mind. He wanted to know why Alice was being targeted in the first place. But the man had no intention of explaining. He was only following orders and didn't care about anything beyond that. Still, the fact that he had already revealed their goal didn't go unnoticed. Nicola pointed out how casually the man had mentioned it, as if he was completely confident in taking him down. That confidence was real. The man believed he had never lost a fight like this before. Nicola met that with a calm reaction. From his side, it was just another coincidence. He had never lost a one-on-one fight either. The pirate-looking man moved things forward, clearly ready to start the fight. Nicola, however, slowed it down, thinking that a straight, unrestricted brawl would be too dull. Instead, he decided to make it more interesting by placing a limitation on himself. Since the man was older, Nicola chose to give him a handicap and declared that he wouldn't use any kicks. The condition was accepted, turning the fight into a pure exchange of punches. No kicks, no tricks with the legs, just fists. The old man didn't hold back and immediately launched a series of punches at Nicola. Despite the intensity, none of the hits seemed to do anything. That alone threw him off. From his perspective, it didn't make sense. Nicola stayed calm and urged him to keep going, as if inviting him to give it everything he had. The old man responded with a strong punch aimed at Nicola's stomach, but even that failed to leave any real impact. At that point, Nicola shifted, saying it was his turn. He tightened his fist and sent a straight punch toward the old man, but it was blocked cleanly with a palm. Nicola followed up with a rapid barrage, yet every strike was met and stopped. The old man even managed to deflect his hand and disrupt his balance slightly, making it seem like he had found an opening. But that moment didn't last. Nicola suddenly struck back, and the impact sent the old man crashing to the ground. The shift was so abrupt that it caught him completely off guard. Trying to understand what happened, the old man looked for an answer. From Nicola's side, the explanation was simple. He had used his head, not just his fists. He had already decided not to use his legs, so he built the entire fight around that restriction. By doing so, he led his opponent into focusing only on his arms. That narrow focus created a blind spot. The old man questioned whether Nicola had predicted that kind of reaction from the start. Nicola made it clear that this was exactly what he specialized in, manipulating how his opponent thinks and reacts. In the end, the outcome came down to the opponent not seeing it coming. Instead of getting frustrated, the old man started to laugh. To him, this was something new. He hadn't expected to encounter a fighting style like that. With that, he accepted the result and admitted defeat. After the fight, the old man stepped aside and allowed Nicola to continue on his way toward the students. Meanwhile, inside Alice and Iris's room, the two sat together on the bed. The atmosphere was calm, and it had been a long time since they had shared a moment like this. Alice found herself thinking back to when they were younger, remembering how she used to get annoyed over Iris's habit of wetting the bed. Iris didn't take that quietly and recalled that Alice wasn't exactly innocent either. Still, from Alice's memory, Iris had been the one doing it more often. As the moment lingered, Alice noticed something off about Iris. There was a subtle tension in her expression. It didn't go unnoticed. Alice tried to figure out if something was bothering her. Iris denied it at first, but Alice pressed gently, reminding her that they were family. That seemed to ease things a bit, and Iris acknowledged it. Then the mood shifted. A strange chill passed through the room, something both of them felt at the same time. Alice reacted immediately, clenching her fist as she recognized what it was. Someone nearby was releasing a strong chi presence. Iris checked on her, but Alice was steady. That kind of pressure didn't affect her the way it used to. Instead of panicking, she focused on what needed to be done. They couldn't just wait. They needed a plan before whoever it was made a move. Given the layout of the room, Alice quickly settled on their usual approach. There wasn't much space, so they would have to rely on what they already knew. Right then, the door opened. Alice immediately recognized the situation. The enemy had arrived. A large man stepped into the room, his presence filling the space as soon as he entered. His eyes landed on Alice, confirming what he was looking for. From his reaction, it was clear he had been given information beforehand. He had been told where to find her, and if that information had been wrong, he would have gone back to deal with the one who gave it. That detail caught Alice's attention. The mention of the source pointed towards someone inside the academy. The description matched the orc girl, the one known as the strongest student. Alice quickly put things together and realized that the man in front of them was the one who had defeated the orc girl. That alone made the situation serious. From Iris's side, the conclusion was immediate. She didn't think they could win this and believed surrender was the safer option. That reaction caught Alice off guard, since it wasn't like Iris to back down so easily. Even so, Alice stayed composed. She reassured Iris and told her to stay back and watch. She planned to handle it herself. The man observed them calmly and made his intent clear. He wasn't there to fight for sport. He planned to take them hostage and expected them to cooperate. Alice didn't accept that. From her side, giving in wasn't an option. The man didn't hesitate to press the point. If she refused, he would simply take them by force. He also made it clear that he didn't see her as a threat. In his eyes, he had already defeated the strongest student in the academy, while Alice had been known as one of the weakest. There was no comparison, but that assumption didn't hold. Alice pointed out the coincidence and acted instantly. She shut off the lights, changing the flow of the situation in a split second. At the same time, she made it clear that she had already defeated that same opponent, the one he had beaten. That caught him off guard. Then came the setup. She signaled a high kick aimed at his head. The man reacted exactly as expected, raising his guard to protect himself. But that was the trap. Instead of following through with the obvious attack, Alice shifted and struck his groin. The hit landed cleanly, and the impact dropped him hard, leaving him unable to respond. From Alice's perspective, it was simple. No one would seriously go for such an obvious move after announcing it. That was exactly why it worked. The man collapsed, groaning from the pain, clearly shaken by the unexpected hit. Even in that state, he saw her approach as cowardly. But from Alice's side, there was no hesitation in how she viewed it. That kind of fighting style was the only way she could stand a chance against opponents stronger than her. This wasn't some staged match, it was a fight for survival. Before things could settle, the door creaked open again. Another presence stepped in, commenting on the situation as if it was something amusing. The tone made it clear that even the weakest student in the academy had managed to take one of their men down. Alice immediately turned her attention to the newcomer, trying to identify who had just arrived. The man on the ground acknowledged her ability, pointing out that she fought well despite her lack of physical strength and low chi. But the one who had just entered was on a completely different level. Alice could feel it the moment she sensed his presence. His chi was overwhelming, far beyond what she had felt even from Nicola. That realization alone sent a chill through her. Still, she didn't back down. From her perspective, everything she had done came from her teacher's guidance. The man dismissed that, making it clear that tricks like that wouldn't work on someone at his level. From his point of view, she should already understand the gap between them. Alice felt the pressure, but she didn't freeze. Instead, she turned to Iris and told her to escape the moment she got the chance. But Iris didn't move. The situation became clear. The man pointed out that it was pointless to expect her to run. Iris had already chosen a side. That hit Alice hard. She tried to process it, hoping it wasn't true, but Iris herself showed hesitation before apologizing. Alice didn't accept it easily. From her side, she needed to hear that it wasn't real. The man cut through that moment and told Alice to give up and come with him. Alice faced him directly, making it clear through her stance alone that surrender wasn't an option. Iris tried to stop her, calling out and urging her to give in, knowing the difference in strength between them. But Alice didn't waver. No matter who stood in front of her, she had already decided she wouldn't surrender. That was something she had learned and accepted fully. The man acknowledged that resolve. From his perspective, her spirit was admirable, but it didn't change the outcome. The man pushed the situation further, bringing up a harsher possibility. Even if Iris had chosen their side, that didn't mean she was out of danger. If her limbs were broken right there, it would put Alice in a position where she couldn't just walk away. No matter what, she still saw Iris as a friend. Alice caught on to what he was doing. The situation was being forced in a way that left her with no clean choice. With that in mind, she made her decision and chose to go with him. At that moment, Nicholas stepped into the room. He arrived late, but his presence changed the atmosphere immediately. Alice's eyes welled up as she saw him. The mercenary was caught off guard by his appearance, realizing that Nicola must have dealt with the old man outside. Nicola didn't waste time. From his perspective, he had just walked into a scene where his student had been pushed to tears. The mercenary tried to size him up, figuring out if he was the one training the elven princess. But Nicola had already moved. He rushed forward and unleashed a rapid series of punches. The mercenary responded just as quickly, blocking every strike without giving ground. The exchange made it clear that Nicola wasn't an ordinary opponent. From the mercenary's point of view, Nicola was strong enough to be considered a proper rival. Nicola didn't accept that comparison. He saw the difference as much larger. The mercenary then stepped back and released his chi, showing his true level. Nicola picked up on it and noticed something specific about his technique. It felt like he was skilled in spearhand-style attacks. The mercenary didn't recognize the reference, but that didn't slow things down. Nicola grabbed a nearby plate and threw it at him. It looked like a cheap distraction, and the mercenary treated it as such. But that was the opening Nicola wanted. He closed the distance instantly and drove a straight punch toward the man's face. But this time, the counter came faster. The mercenary struck back, landing a solid hit to Nicola's stomach. The impact was heavy. Nicola coughed up blood as the force settled in. Alice and Iris both froze at the sight. The mercenary stood over him, already reading the result. From his perspective, the damage was serious. That blow had likely ruptured Nicola's organs. With that, his attention shifted back to Alice. After showing that her teacher couldn't protect her in this state, he expected her to follow without resistance. Nicola suddenly moved and landed a kick on the mercenary. The man didn't see it coming at all. From his perspective, it didn't make sense. Nicola had just taken a hit that should have left him unable to move. Trying to understand it, he questioned how Nicola was even standing. But the answer was simple. Nicola had used magic. The man considered whether it was some kind of transformation magic, but Nicola dismissed that idea. For him, faking injuries was nothing complicated. Even so, the mercenary didn't back down. He still believed he could fight, but Nicola had already controlled the situation. His opponent's movement was restricted, while Nicola himself was still free to strike. That was enough. The man went down, unable to continue. With that handled, Nicola turned his attention to Iris. From his side, there were too many unanswered questions. He made it clear that she needed to explain what was going on. Iris didn't respond at first, insisting there was nothing to say. Nicola pushed further, bringing up the past. The conflict between high elves and dark elves, the loss of her parents, and the possibility that she was acting out of resentment toward Alice. But Iris denied that completely. She didn't harbor any hatred toward Alice. That only made things more confusing. Nicola pressed again, questioning why she had chosen to cooperate with the invaders if that was the case. At that point he shifted his approach. He pointed out how harsh the situation was for Alice as well. Being betrayed by someone she trusted so deeply wasn't something easy to accept. It showed how even the closest relationships could fall apart. Alice stepped in, focusing on Iris. From her side, Iris wasn't just a companion, she was family. She wanted the truth, no matter what it was. Iris couldn't hold it in anymore. She broke down and apologized, making it clear that she had never felt resentment toward Alice. Nicola watched the exchange and let out a quiet sigh. Then Iris clarified everything. From the beginning, everything she had done was meant to protect the princess. That caught Alice off guard. Iris explained that she hadn't been given full details about the operation. The task had come from someone she trusted, and her role was to support the invaders and eventually bring the princess to a specific person. That raised a new question. Nicola immediately focused on it, wanting to know who exactly had given her that order. Iris hesitated, clearly struggling with what she was about to reveal. She started to speak about the leader of the invaders but stopped short, warning them instead not to lower their guard. Whoever was behind this was no ordinary opponent. From her perspective, that person was extremely strong. Nicola focused on that detail and tried to measure it. He wondered if this person was stronger than him. Iris didn't hold back her judgment. As far as she could tell, that individual surpassed every other member of the Academy's staff. That answer only made things more serious. Nicola pressed further, wanting to know the identity of the one giving the orders. Iris looked at them, but her thoughts were already elsewhere. In her mind, one figure stood out clearly. The image of Satella, Nicola's older sister and the Academy's principal, came to the front of her thoughts. Later, one of Satella's men entered her room carrying Alice in his arms. Satella acknowledged the job and had the man bring her closer. As Alice was handed over, something immediately felt off. Her appearance began to shift right in front of Satella's eyes. In an instant the illusion broke. The figure in her arms turned into one of the intruders, revealing that it had been shape-shifting all along. At the same time, another transformation occurred nearby. Nicola revealed himself and moved without hesitation, landing a kick on Sat-Ella. Instead of being shaken, Sat-Ella showed a hint of admiration. From her perspective, Nicola hadn't changed at all. He was still relying on the same underhanded tactics. Nicola didn't deny it. From his side, everything had started to point toward her. Even so, he hadn't suspected her from the beginning. The doubt only began when he heard the screams from the first-class students inside the library. That was the moment something didn't add up. Sat-Ella should have heard those screams as well, if not more clearly, since she was supposed to be there. Sat-Ella brushed it off, suggesting that she might have already been taken down by then. But Nicola didn't accept that explanation. From what he knew, none of the intruders were strong enough to defeat her. There was no way she would fall that easily. That only confirmed it further. Sat-Ella seemed almost pleased, noting that Nicola continued to meet her expectations. But Nicola wasn't interested in praise. He wanted answers. He needed to know why she had done all of this. Sat-Ella didn't give anything away. From her side, if he wanted the truth, he would have to earn it. With that, both of them moved at the same time, closing the distance instantly. As they clashed, Sat-Ella noticed something unusual. Nicola's chi felt lower than expected. It looked like he was trying to trick her into lowering her guard, but she didn't fall for it. Then something unexpected happened. Nicola's face began to change again, the shape-shifting effect revealing Alice instead. That sudden shift caught Sat-Ella off guard for a split second. She immediately tried to locate where Nicola had gone. But he was already behind her. Without hesitation, he struck, driving a punch into her stomach and sending her crashing into the nearby wall. Sat-Ella looked at Nicola with a clear judgment in mind, seeing his approach as cowardly. Nicola didn't deny it at all. From his side, he already knew that about himself. That same trait was what got him removed from the hero's party in the past. Even so, Sat-Ella admitted something difficult. Despite everything, his tactics had managed to defeat her. Nicola accepted that without hesitation, seeing it as nothing more than the truth. He then pointed out something that didn't sit right with him. From his perspective, she should have noticed what was happening earlier. There was no way someone like her would miss such an obvious use of basic shape-shifting magic right in front of her. Even if Alice had managed to copy his appearance, mimicking his behavior and movements, that precisely wasn't something a beginner could pull off easily. Sat-Ella took that in and reflected on it, recognizing the gap between a mentor and their disciple. To her, that difference was part of what made martial arts so interesting. With the fight already settled, Nicola raised his hand and used healing magic on her injuries. Once that was done, he made his intention clear. In exchange for healing her, he wanted a full explanation. Sat-Ella didn't resist. She let out a quiet breath and agreed to tell him everything. She also asked him to heal the man who had been involved earlier. That caught Nicola off guard. From his understanding, that man was just a hired mercenary. But Sat-Ella corrected that assumption. According to her, they were all part of the academy's staff. That revelation surprised both Nicola and Alice. After some time, Sat-Ella began explaining the situation. The entire operation had been set in motion as preparation for a coming conflict, a war over the throne. Nicola connected it to something he had heard before, rumors about unrest in the Elven lands. Alice, on the other hand, recalled something more recent. The woman she had faced at the wrestling event came to mind. Sat-Ella continued, explaining that it all started as internal conflict between the High Elves and the Dark Elves. But everything changed when the Elven King made an unexpected decision. He chose to step down from the throne, seeking a certain resolution. That detail surprised Alice the most. It involved her own father, yet she had never been informed about it. Sat-Ella turned to Alice and apologized, explaining that she had been instructed to keep everything hidden from her. From there, Nicola focused on the bigger picture and questioned who would take the throne next. Sat-Ella clarified that there wasn't a chosen successor yet. The decision would come from what they called a war for the throne. It wasn't a traditional war, but a tournament organized by the Elven Kingdom. Anyone could join as long as they were a citizen, regardless of race. The one who remained standing at the end would be crowned king. Nicola then shifted the conversation, trying to understand how the recent raid tied into all of this. Sat-Ella explained that it was intentional. The situation was created to push everyone into real combat, giving them actual experience under pressure. Her main goal had been to strengthen Alice, preparing her for what was ahead and ensuring she could rise as the next ruler. That revelation caught Alice off guard. The idea that she was being shaped into a future queen was something she hadn't expected to hear. Nicola wasn't done questioning things. He brought up the involvement of the first-class students, wondering why they had been dragged into something like this. Sat-Ella explained that it served the same purpose. It gave them a chance to experience real battles, and she reassured him that they were already being taken care of after the incident. She also revealed something else. The appearance of the skeleton general in the dungeon had been her doing. She had anticipated that Nicola would eventually take Alice there and have her face it. Nicola reacted to that, wishing she had told him earlier. When he had encountered her in the dungeon before, she had seemed unsettled. That detail confused Ella, as she had no memory of meeting him there at all. Nicola assumed she might have simply been irritated at being found out at the time. With everything laid out, Ella moved on to something else and handed Nicola a letter. Nicola looked it over and read through it. The contents caught him off guard. It was a termination notice, stating that as of that day, he was no longer part of the academy staff due to poor performance. The suddenness of it left him surprised, but Ella quickly followed up, telling him not to misunderstand the situation. There was a reason behind everything Ella had done. Despite the Academy's official stance of neutrality, there was a long-standing bond between Shanoa Academy and the Elven Kingdom. Because of that political position, they couldn't openly support Alice in matters tied to the throne. So instead, Ella chose a different approach. She entrusted Nicola with the role of supporting Alice from the shadows. His task was clear: help her win the tournament and make sure peace was preserved in the Elven Kingdom. It was something she fully expected him to carry through. At the same time, the situation in the Elven Kingdom itself was far from stable. It was a small nation positioned between powerful forces, the Demon Lord's territory and the Republic of Shanoa. The elves living there relied on farming and hunting, trading what they could with neighboring lands. They didn't have strong industries or overwhelming military strength. Compared to major powers like Size or the Demon Lord's army, they were clearly outmatched. They also lacked a figure of overwhelming power, someone like a hero or a Demon Lord, who could serve as a deterrent. Because of that, the kingdom was vulnerable. Any larger nation could take control of it if they chose to. Things only became more unstable when a revolt led by the Dark Elves broke out. That unrest forced the High Elf King to step down, leaving the throne vacant. To resolve it, the kingdom organized a tournament to decide who would rule next. With all of that in motion, Nicola, Alice, and Iris eventually arrived at the capital of the Elven Kingdom. The journey had been made easier thanks to a military teleportation circle, allowing them to reach their destination without delay. Alice acknowledged how dependable the Republic of Shanoa was. As they walked through the area, she started observing her surroundings more closely. One thing stood out right away: there were far more dark elves around than before. That alone made her uneasy. It raised questions about what was happening inside the castle, and her concern quickly shifted toward her father. When they reached the castle, the situation became clear. The entrance was heavily guarded by dark elves, making it impossible to slip inside unnoticed. Alice considered forcing their way in, but Nicola immediately shut that idea down, knowing it would only make things worse. At that moment, someone familiar noticed them. Rise, the masked fighter, spotted the group and immediately recognized Alice as the Elven Princess. Alice also recognized her and wondered why she was there. Rise's presence had a reason. Her master was taking part in the war for the throne, so she had come along to support them. From her point of view, Alice's reason for being there was obvious as well. Alice, however, was focused on something else. She hadn't been able to reach her father and had no idea where he was. Rise watched her for a moment, then revealed that she knew where Alice's family was. That caught Alice's attention immediately. She trusted Rise enough to believe her, especially after having fought her before. From that brief encounter, she had already formed a sense of what kind of person Rise was. Rise seemed satisfied with that trust and told them to follow her. After a short while, they arrived at the place where Alice's parents were staying. The king, her father, was surprised to see her there. Alice didn't hold back and rushed straight to him, relieved to see that he was safe. The king acknowledged her concern and expressed regret for making her worry, but Alice still couldn't ignore what had been bothering her. She wanted to understand why she had been kept in the dark about everything happening in the kingdom. From his perspective, there was a reason for it. He believed that if she had known earlier, she would have rushed to his side immediately, but that would only distract her. If she was to win the tournament and take the throne, it was better for her to focus on that goal rather than stay close to him. Alice turned to her father, trying to understand why he had chosen to give up his right to the throne. From his side, the answer was simple. He didn't want to see more elves turning against each other and shedding their own blood. If stepping down as king could prevent further loss of life, then that was a price he was willing to pay. Still, he knew the situation wasn't that simple. This wasn't a time to cling to idealistic thinking. The leader of the Dark Elves, Khon, held strong supremacist beliefs. If things continued this way, the country could shift toward discrimination against High Elves. Despite all that, his priority remained clear. He wanted Alice to live a peaceful and happy life. Deep down, he didn't want her to take part in the war for the throne at all. Even so, he believed in something greater. He wanted a country where discrimination didn't exist, and for him, that kind of future depended on its leader truly caring for the people. In his eyes, Alice had the qualities needed to become that kind of ruler. He reassured her that she didn't need to worry about him. The royal guards were there to protect him. At that point, Iris stepped forward and chose to stay behind as well, deciding to help guard the king. She was confident in her strength and believed she could handle any threat. As a dark elf, she also thought she might be able to reason with any assassins who came, rather than just fighting them. Alice looked at her, still unsure, but Iris remained firm. She wanted Alice to focus on the tournament and give it her best. From her perspective, Alice had what it took to become a great queen. Alice couldn't help but feel uneasy as she looked at Iris. Before things could linger, Nicola stepped in and called for her. It was time to move on and take a look around the city. Nicola figured that seeing the current state of the kingdom firsthand might help Alice clear her thoughts. At the very least, it was a relief knowing her father was safe. As they walked through the city, something caught Nicola's attention. A crowd had gathered, cheering loudly. From where he stood, it looked like an arena had been set up right in the middle of the area. On the stage, two fighters were facing off. One was a swordsman from the High Elves, while the other was a dark elf fighting barehanded. Nicola immediately judged the outcome in his head. From his perspective, the dark elf had the clear advantage. Alice tried to follow his reasoning, but before anything else could be said, the fight already moved forward. The dark elf charged in without hesitation and landed a punch that instantly knocked the high elf down. With the opponent already defeated, the dark elf used the moment to make a point to the crowd. The display was meant to show the supposed superiority of dark elves over high elves. Before things could settle, a young boy rushed onto the stage, desperate to intervene. It was clear he was related to the fallen fighter. He tried to protect him, but the dark elf didn't hold back. He grabbed the boy and threw him off the stage without hesitation. The atmosphere shifted. The dark elf continued to stir the crowd, pushing the idea that high elves had always looked down on dark elves, treating them as inferior. Now, he was flipping that narrative, claiming that dark elves were the truly superior race. People in the crowd got involved, restraining the boy while the dark elf stepped over the fallen high elf on the stage, asserting dominance. Then someone stepped in. Alice's voice cut through the noise, firm and clear. She moved forward with determination in her eyes, drawing everyone's attention. The dark elf turned toward her, immediately recognizing who she was. The high elven princess had stepped onto the stage. Alice climbed up without hesitation and called out the name Colne, directly confronting the leader of the dark elves. Colne questioned why she had come back. Alice had returned with the intention of taking part in the war for the throne. Colne made it clear that this place was no longer meant for her kind, as the dark elves were set to rule the elf kingdom from now on. Alice then wondered if he was aiming to become the next king. Colne confirmed it without hesitation. He had already secured the highest score in the preliminary rounds of the tournament and held first place in the rankings, placing himself as the elf closest to the throne at that moment. Alice then considered what he would do if he actually became king. Colne's intent was straightforward. His first mandate would be to turn all high elves into slaves of the dark elves, giving them a taste of the humiliation they once endured. Alice looked at him and acknowledged his strength without denying it. Still, she remained certain that he would not come out victorious in the tournament. She had already decided that she would be the one to win and become the next ruler of the country. After a brief exchange, Colne showed a faint smile and made it clear that she should first raise her rank in the tournament if she wanted to stand against him. With that he left. Alice simply watched him go. Sometime later, Nicola brought up the need to begin their strategic meeting to plan for the tournament. Alice agreed without hesitation. At the central area of the Elf Kingdom, the two of them discussed their approach. Nicola explained that Alice needed to start aiming for 8th place so she could secure a spot in the main event. The tournament, known as the War for the Throne, was a fighting competition held within the Elf Kingdom to determine its next king. Participation was open to anyone, with the only requirement being citizenship of the country. The strongest fighters from both elves and dark elves took part in it. To qualify for the main event, participants had to raise their ranking by defeating others. Only the top 8 would advance. The ranking system itself worked by defeating opponents who were ranked higher and taking their place in the standings. Alice mentioned that her current ranking was among the lowest and wondered if anyone would even bother fighting her. Nicola assured her that this would not be a problem. Many dark elves already held resentment toward her as a high elven princess. He also had another idea in mind, and he placed a bag of money on the table. Alice questioned where the money came from. Nicola explained that it was the payment he received from Sha Noa Academy after his termination. He planned to use it as prize money to attract opponents willing to fight her. Alice felt that he did not need to go that far, but Nicola told her not to worry about it. Alice gave a small smile, realizing that he cared a lot about his pupil even if he did not openly show it. Nicola dismissed it, saying he was simply doing what he wanted. Then Alice became curious and asked about his previous pupil. Nicola described her as childish and narcissistic, and someone who ultimately betrayed him. He considered her the worst disciple he had ever had. Alice looked at him, thinking she had no idea about that part of his past. At that moment, the door suddenly opened, and a young woman called out to him as her master. Nicola was caught off guard when he saw Mary, who immediately ran toward him and embraced him. His expression turned tense as he demanded to know why she was there. Mary explained that she had spent a long time reflecting on what she had done, but before she could continue, Nicola pushed her away and told her to get off him first. He pointed out that she had the nerve to show up after betraying him. Mary stopped and admitted that she was wrong, acknowledging that she had betrayed the one who had taken care of her. Nicola questioned whether she was truly Mary, wondering if someone else might be using shape-shifting magic. Mary responded by asking if he had really forgotten the face of his own disciple. Nicola answered that he clearly remembered the face of his former disciple, one he could not stand. Mary then revealed that she had been captured by the Demon Lord's army shortly after he had been expelled from the party. During that time, she came to understand how badly she had wronged him. She recalled how Nicola had taken her in after she lost her parents and how he had always listened to her selfish requests. Because of that, she felt relieved and happy to see him again. Before she could continue further, Nicola cut her off, stating that he already understood what she was trying to say. It seemed that she had changed. Mary looked at him, but Nicola questioned what kind of trap she was trying to pull this time. Mary appeared confused, yet Nicola reminded her of the very methods he once taught her, ways to make others lower their guard. Mary insisted that it was not like that and that she truly cared about him. Nicola found that hard to believe, especially coming from someone who had once attacked him with magic while he was already down. He admitted that he was aware of his own flaws, calling himself a coward and the lowest of the low, but even so, he made it clear that he would never betray someone who had been with him for so long. Tears formed in Mary's eyes as she apologized to her master, Nicola. She had believed that he might forgive her. Nicola asked if that was everything she had to say. He then told her to leave if she was done, making it clear that he did not want to see her face again. Mary stood up and asked for one last chance to speak. She expressed that even if he could not believe her now, he still held a special place in her heart. She showed her gratitude for everything he had done for her up to that point. Soon after, the door shut loudly behind her. Alice then asked her teacher if that was really all right. Nicola responded that it was, and shifted his focus back to their plans for the tournament. Outside, Mary walked away as tears continued to fall. She questioned what she had been expecting in the first place. Even so, she felt relieved to have seen her master again after such a long time. At the same time, she understood that her mistakes were not something she could easily make up for. She realized she needed to think carefully about what she could do next. Then she remembered that Nicola was working to help his new elf pupil win the war for the throne. She began to consider that maybe she could use that situation to her advantage somehow. At that moment, she spotted Jay, the former hero and their previous party leader. They both noticed each other with clear surprise. Jay greeted her and wondered what had brought her there. Mary answered that it was complicated, then questioned how he could speak so casually to her after everything that had happened, calling him a cheater. Jay reacted as if she still had an issue with him. Mary dismissed it, saying it was all in the past. She admitted that she herself had not exactly been a good person either. Then she asked what he was doing in the Elf Kingdom. Jay revealed that he had come to take part in the war for the throne. Mary was surprised and asked why. Jay implied that the reason was not simple. A few days earlier, Jay had gone to the Republic of Shinoa to look for Nicola. Even though he knew that this kind of action did not suit him, he still felt that he needed to apologize to Nicola as soon as possible. A hooded man suddenly approached him, suggesting that he might be searching for someone. Jay was caught off guard and questioned who the man was. The hooded figure began to speak as if he knew something about him, but Jay quickly cut him off, making it clear that if he continued he would leave immediately. He then asked what the man wanted from him. The hooded man claimed he was there to give him a push in the right direction. He hinted that Jay was trying to win Nicola over. Jay was surprised and wondered how the man could possibly know that. The man only gave a vague response, brushing it off with a light laugh. Jay grew more confused about what was happening. The hooded man then advised him to go to the Elf Kingdom and take part in the tournament held to decide the next king. Nicola would be there, and it would give him the chance to meet him again. The man handed Jay money for travel expenses along with a fake identity document. In addition, he gave him a secret drug, mentioning that it would prove useful. Jay accepted everything, noting that the man had come well prepared. He became curious about the drug's effects. The hooded man explained that it could push his magic and chi to their limits and even heal fatal wounds instantly, describing it as a miraculous potion. Jay showed interest and saw no reason to refuse it. He then questioned why the man was helping him reunite with Nicola. However, before he could get an answer, the hooded figure had already disappeared. Back in the present, Mary asked Jay why he needed the fake identity. Jay explained that he would not be able to join the tournament without being recognized as a citizen of the country. Mary then wondered if he was aiming to become the king of the Elf Kingdom that badly. Jay denied that idea and made it clear that his goal was simply to make things right with Nicola. He understood that if they were to meet under normal circumstances, they would not easily come to terms. Because of that, he plans to climb the rankings in the tournament and face Nicola there. In his mind, it would feel like a reunion shaped by fate, and through that he hoped to earn forgiveness for what he had done in the past. Mary did not believe that such a plan would be enough. She then revealed that she had an idea, one she believed would work without fail. The next day, Nicola informed Alice that her first opponent had been decided. Alice was pleased to hear it, and Nicola told her to get ready, hinting that what was coming next would be something worth seeing. Her first opponent was someone ranked 100th. Alice found that surprising and wondered why someone at that level would agree to fight someone ranked as low as 30,000 like her. Nicola explained that it was because he had put all the money he received from his termination on the line as prize money. Alice then questioned what they would do after that match, even if she managed to win. Nicola answered that he would stake the savings he had built up over the years on her next victory. That response left Alice stunned. Nicola continued, explaining that he would then use whatever money he gained from that win as prize money for her following match, repeating the process each time. What truly mattered was the amount he was willing to bet. By continuing this method, he believed she could rise through the rankings quickly. Alice found the idea impressive and thought highly of Nicola, seeing him as someone truly reliable. Nicola then shifted the discussion to her next opponent, a dark elf named Glaive. He described Glaive's fighting style as similar to that of an orc, someone who relied on brute strength and overwhelming chi to crush opponents. However, Glaive also had a troubling habit. He was known for continuing to beat his opponents even after they had surrendered. It had already been spread that Glaive intended to disfigure her face with his fists, even though the match had not yet been officially announced. Despite that, Alice showed no fear, feeling confident as long as Nicola was by her side. Nicola looked at her and noticed how different she seemed compared to when she had spoken about her sister. He figured that her encounter with Colne had strengthened her resolve. Nicola acknowledged her attitude, feeling that it was the right mindset. He then reminded her that the match was set to take place in 3 days. There was a technique Nicola wanted her to master before the match. He told her to lend him her hand. Without much build-up, he lightly struck her hand, and in that instant, Alice felt her chi disappear. She was caught off guard, realizing that her chi was gone, and she wondered what he had done. Nicola revealed that it was a secret technique known as the chi seal. It was one of the 3 hidden techniques left behind by the martial artist Korn. This technique could temporarily block the flow of chi within the body. Chi was a substance released through the pores between muscles, and scholars believed that once released, it would be absorbed back into the muscles, strengthening and energizing the body. With this technique, it was possible to stop an opponent from releasing any chi. However, the effect was not permanent, as the body would eventually return to normal. Nicola reminded her that the effect was only temporary and instructed her to practice the technique until the day of her match. Alice accepted the instruction without hesitation. On the day of the battle, Alice noticed that they were not using the same arena where Colne had fought before. Nicola explained that the previous arena was a special one meant for demonstrations. As they entered the room, the sound of people talking filled the space. Alice wondered if the place they were in would lead her to the arena. The location of each duel was decided based on the wishes of the participants, and this time, it seemed to be connected to Glaive's preference. Nicola gave her a calm look, encouraging her to step forward and show what she was capable of. Alice returned the look with confidence and moved ahead. The referee called for Alice to step forward, explaining that it would transport her to the arena for match number 45. Alice acknowledged the instruction. Her opponent was already waiting in the ring. With a sudden impact, Alice was instantly transported into the arena. She steadied herself and walked toward the man standing across from her, confirming that he was Glaive. The man acknowledged it and made it clear that he intended to leave her unrecognizable. The match was then declared, marking the start of the fight between Glaive and Alice. Glaive charged straight at Alice and immediately threw a punch, but she avoided it with ease. He followed up with a high kick, yet she slipped past that as well. Confusion started to show as he kept missing, unable to understand what was going on with her constant evasion. He grew frustrated at how she kept avoiding him without making a move to strike back. Alice remained calm and pointed out his earlier claim about disfiguring her face. She chose to wait, letting him wear himself out by missing his attacks until he could finally land a proper hit. Glaive's irritation grew, and he rushed at her again. This time, Alice stayed focused, smoothly dodging his attack before driving a punch straight into his chest. The impact caught him off guard, though he brushed it off, thinking such a weak strike could not possibly decide the match or cause any real damage. However, something felt off. The chi he had been using to defend himself suddenly began to fade. Before he could fully process it, Alice moved in again, pressing the attack without giving him time to recover. She struck his stomach, and the force sent him crashing to the ground. As he struggled, he questioned how she managed to get through his defense. Alice made it clear that his mistake was declaring his intention to strike her face from the beginning. If it had only been a feint, it might have worked, but directly aiming for what he had already revealed made his attacks predictable. She had simply waited for the right moment, allowing his final attempt to break his own defense while all his efforts amounted to nothing but swings through empty air. Her victory was the result of his repeated mistakes. Glaive coughed up blood and collapsed, unable to continue. The match was decided, and Alice was declared the winner of match number 45. Outside the arena, Alice excitedly shared her victory with Nicola. He had already witnessed the match and recognized it as a well-executed fight. Hearing his approval brought her a quiet sense of satisfaction. The two of them shared a quick fist bump. Nicola showed a faint smile as he revealed that he had earned back 10,000 times the money he had bet on her match. Alice was caught off guard by that. Most people had not believed she could win, especially considering her lack of offensive strength and Glaive's strong defenses, which led many to place their bets on him. With the amount they gained, Nicola explained that they could now arrange a match for her against the fighter ranked 8th. Alice was surprised that her next opponent would already be at that level. Nicola had already reviewed the opponent's previous matches and noted that he surpassed her in nearly every aspect, especially in raw chi. The gap between them was overwhelming. Alice then wondered what her chances were. Nicola explained that the fighters advancing to the main event would not be decided for over a month. That meant she had a full month to prepare. He already had a solid plan in mind. He told her that she would fight 100 chi users in order to increase her own chi. Alice was taken aback by the number and questioned how that would even be possible. Nicola explained that a person's chi grows stronger after defeating another chi user, and they would make use of that principle. Alice then wondered where they would even find 100 chi users. Nicola pointed out the rule stating that combatants must defeat higher-ranked opponents to climb the rankings. He explained that since Alice was now ranked 100th, they could gather a group of the lowest-ranked fighters and have her face them. The idea was simple: she would defeat them all, and whoever remained standing at the end would be declared the winner under those conditions. Nicola looked at her with a confident expression, finding the idea of her overwhelming a group of lesser fighters somewhat entertaining. Alice, however, felt uneasy about it and could not see it as something enjoyable. With the plan decided, Nicola urged her to begin immediately, making use of the momentum while it lasted. From that point on, Alice entered a harsh month of training, constantly fighting to grow stronger. She went on to defeat 100 opponents every single day for a month, building up to more than 3,000 victories in total. She placed complete trust in her mentor and devoted herself to fighting exactly as he instructed. A month passed. Nicola acknowledged the effort she had put in during that time and felt impressed by her progress. Alice let out a tired breath, feeling that the entire experience had been harsh. She had taken countless hits and endured a great deal of pain, but she managed to push through it all and come out stronger in the end. Nicola congratulated her and told her that she could now confidently say she had reached the C tier of chi levels, which stood as the middle rank. With that done, they turned their attention to planning for her upcoming match against the fighter ranked 8th in the tournament. Her opponent was an archer named Alec. Normally, bows and heavy weapons were considered ineffective against chi armor, as they could not easily break through it. However, Alec was different, as he could infuse his arrows with chi. For Alice, this would be her first time facing an archer. On top of that, Alec coated his arrows with paralysis agents, meaning that even the slightest graze would be enough to take her out of the fight. Alice wondered if the use of poisons like that was even allowed. Nicola made it clear that it was, and that calling such tactics cowardly was just an excuse. Because of that, he handed her a small bottle. It served as a reminder that relying on poisons could easily turn against the user as well. Later, Alice stood within a magic circle, preparing to be transported to the arena for match number 264. She looked toward her teacher, seeking reassurance. Nicola remained calm, confident that she would be fine as long as she followed the plan. In an instant, Alice found herself in a forest. It appeared that Alec had chosen this environment for the match. From that, she realized that he intended to take advantage of long-range combat, making it clear what approach she needed to take. At the same time, Alec waited high up in a tree, carefully observing his surroundings. He was a former member of the High Elf Mercenary Corps, known for his skill as an archer. As he assessed the situation, he noted that his opponent this time was the princess, and that the gap between their chi levels was not particularly large. He believed he could pierce her chi armor with his arrows. Even though his opponent was the princess, he had already decided to end the match quickly. As Alice moved through the forest, Alec fired an arrow at her. She noticed the attack right away and dodged it without hesitation. Alec was caught off guard by how easily she avoided his shot. Alice quickly located his position, but just as she was about to close the distance, another arrow was released. This time, she raised her arm and blocked it, causing the arrow to snap on impact. Alec recognized that she had grown much stronger in a short time and became curious about how she achieved it. Alice made it clear that it was the result of effort. In response, Alec raised both his hands. Alice wondered if he was surrendering, but something about it did not feel right. She noticed that his chi level seemed lower than it should have been. Alec explained that this was intentional, meant to make his surrender appear genuine. Alice did not accept that and pointed out that if he was being honest, he should reveal his true chi. Her reasoning was simple, as a clone would never be able to perfectly match the chi of the original. Alec questioned if she was accusing him of using a doppelganger technique, but his next move confirmed it. He suddenly rushed toward her, acknowledging that her suspicion was correct. However, Alice reacted instantly, delivering a solid kick that sent him crashing to the ground. As she watched, his body began to fade, confirming that it had only been a clone. She paused, trying to figure out where the real Alec was hiding. In that moment of hesitation, an arrow sliced across her arm. Alec revealed himself, having successfully landed a hit. He admitted that she had given him more trouble than expected. Alice questioned whether he was the real one this time, and he confirmed it. He also noted that she had forced him to rely on one of his hidden techniques. Alice realized that what she had just faced was part of his strategy. Alec explained that when most fighters launch an attack, they naturally focus their chi into it, leaving their defense slightly weakened for a brief moment. That was the opening he took advantage of to strike with his arrows. He acknowledged her effort but concluded that this was where her progress would end, making it clear that he believed the match was already decided in his favor. Alec felt confident that the paralysis had already begun to take effect. He believed that Alice would soon lose consciousness, and once her eyes closed, the match would be over in his favor. However, before that could happen, Alice suddenly rushed forward without hesitation. She kept her focus sharp and closed the distance, striking him directly in the face. The force of the blow sent Alec crashing into a nearby tree. He was unable to process what had just happened and found it hard to believe. He questioned how she was still able to move. Alice had already anticipated his use of poison and prepared for it in advance. She revealed a small bottle, making it clear that she had taken countermeasures. Alec realized that she had used an antidote, which explained how she resisted the paralysis. As Alice turned to leave, Alec called out to her, accusing her of fighting unfairly. She glanced back, unwilling to accept that criticism from someone who relied on poison as his main tactic. Then she continued walking away, leaving the outcome settled. With her victory secured, the participants for the main event of the tournament were finalized. The news quickly spread throughout the Elf Kingdom, and expectations surrounding Alice began to rise. The 8 finalists were, for the most part, as anticipated. The following day, Nicola planned to have Alice study and memorize everything about the remaining contestants. However, as he looked over the list, he was suddenly taken aback. One name stood out to him. Jay was among the finalists. Alice noted that Jay had barely managed to secure 7th place in the rankings and wondered if he was someone Nicola knew. Nicola made it clear that Jay was the person he despised more than anyone else. Alice understood that there must have been a serious reason behind that level of resentment. Nicola pointed out that she should already be familiar with his story. That man had once been known as the hero. Alice was surprised to realize that the person being referred to was indeed Jay. However, his chi had been taken from him, leaving him significantly weaker than before. Even without chi, he remained a top-class warrior. Nicola found it somewhat satisfying that he was taking part in the tournament, as it gave him the long-awaited chance to settle things with him. He made it clear that Alice absolutely had to defeat Jay. As he held her shoulders, Alice accepted it and stated that she would fight the same way she always had. Nicola, however, insisted that they needed to be even more cautious than usual. He even considered underhanded methods, thinking about something like poisoning his food if necessary. Alice reflected on the tournament bracket and realized that if she were to face the former hero, it would happen during the semi-finals. But to reach that point, she would need to win every match leading up to it. Her next opponent was Captain Shula. Nicola asked about him, and Alice explained that he was the captain of the Knights, known as the best swordsman in the Elf Kingdom. His style involves dual wielding. Nicola then asked if he had any weaknesses. Alice admitted that she did not know of any, but she had heard that he became even stronger when fighting alongside his twin brother, Kara. Nicola took note of that, recognizing the challenge of facing a dual-blade swordsman. He then mentioned that he had been considering expanding her range of abilities. He brought up the grimoire she had obtained from a previous event and suggested she try using it. Alice pointed out that the magic contained in that book was very different from what they were used to in the West. Nicola saw it as something that could be adapted with enough effort. He then urged her to push as far as possible before her next match, emphasizing that they still had plenty of training ahead. Alice responded with clear enthusiasm, ready to continue. On the first day of the tournament, Alice noticed Nicola looking around and wondered if he was searching for someone. Nicola admitted that he had been thinking about whether Jay might be present. Alice pointed out that only her match and Cohn's match were scheduled for that day. Nicola considered that Jay might have come just to watch. At that moment, he noticed Sat Ella standing on the stage and wondered why she was there. Soon after, she called for everyone's attention and signaled for the contestants to make their entrances. She welcomed the crowd, announcing the start of the first match of the tournament for the throne. She then introduced herself as Sat Ella, the principal of Shanoa Academy and the host of the event. Some of the audience began to murmur, questioning what Shanoa Academy had to do with the tournament. Sat Ella explained that ever since its founding, Shanoa Academy had maintained close ties with the Elf Kingdom. Because of that connection, she had been chosen as a referee who could be trusted to remain fair and impartial. She made it clear that she would oversee the tournament with full objectivity until its conclusion, and then proceeded to announce the start of the first match of the day. On the stage stood the captain of the Knights, Shula, known for wielding two blades with refined skill, alongside Princess Alice, who had risen from the very bottom of the rankings to stand among the strongest. Sat Ella invited Shula to give a few words. He showed full confidence in his victory, stating that his strategy could not be beaten, which drew cheers from the crowd. Sat Ella acknowledged his words before turning to Alice. Alice expressed her determination to win, driven by her goal of building a nation where everyone could live happily. From the side, Colin and Nicola watched the scene unfold. Sat Ella then thanked both contestants for their statements. As the higher-ranked fighter, Shula was given the right to decide an additional rule for the match. He chose to turn it into a 2 versus 2 tag battle. Alice was caught off guard by this decision. Shula then called his twin brother, Kara, onto the stage, choosing him as his partner. He suggested that Alice could have her trainer fight alongside her. Alice was surprised by the sudden change, while Nicola calmly accepted the condition. Shula believed that this decision guaranteed victory for him and his brother. Alice questioned whether this was truly acceptable, but Shula remained confident, treating it as part of their plan. Sat Ella accepted the arrangement and officially declared the first match of the day as a tag match. Watching from the side, Colin dismissed the situation, thinking that they had provoked something far beyond their control. As the battle began, Nicola told Alice to stay back. She wondered if he intended to face both opponents on his own. Nicola remained unfazed, believing he could handle fighters of their level without effort. Shula and his brother reacted with anger at his attitude. Nicola simply looked at them, and in the next moment he released his chi. The sudden surge of power filled the area, causing both brothers to freeze as a deep sense of fear took hold of them. The pressure felt overwhelming, as if they were standing before something far more terrifying than the Demon Lord itself. Nicola stared at them, expecting them to make a move. Instead, both Shula and his brother collapsed to the ground, their bodies trembling under the weight of his chi alone. Shula realized there was no way they could defeat someone like Nicola, and both he and his brother surrendered while their bodies continued to tremble. Once Nicola withdrew his chi, the overwhelming pressure disappeared. He turned to Alice with a faint smile, noting that she had won the match without even taking a hit. Alice acknowledged it calmly. Sat Ella then declared the winners to be the duo of Alice and Nicola. Nicola let out a light laugh, remarking that it was fortunate their opponents had made such foolish choices. Alice, however, felt that she had not done anything in the match. As they made their way out, she wondered if the outcome was truly acceptable. Nicola pointed out that their opponents were the ones who had proposed the tag match in the first place. Soon after, Sat Ella called for the second match, but Colin's opponent suddenly conceded before it even began. The crowd reacted with surprise, murmuring among themselves. Nicola observed that Colin's opponent had chosen to give up the match. The opponent approached Colin, shook his hand, and chose to preserve his position without risking injury. Alice noted that Colin had always been popular, even gaining support from some high elves. Nicola questioned why someone like him would push for a revolution. Alice believed that Colin sympathized with the suffering of the people, even if he himself lived a relatively comfortable life. Colin understood that things were not equal for everyone and wanted to bring change through a revolution. Nicola considered this and wondered if there was more behind his motives. Alice admitted it was only her personal theory, but she believed Colin might also be trying to reunite with his long-lost sister, Iris. During his childhood, Colin had often spoken about searching for his missing sister once he became an adult. Now, he aimed to claim the throne and the power that came with it, using those resources to continue his search for Iris. Nicola felt that the information they had gathered might prove useful later. A few days passed, and then Nicola called for Alice, telling her that it was about to begin. Alice looked at him and agreed. She mentioned that she wanted to observe the match in person, but Nicola insisted that they did not have the time for that with all the preparations they still needed to handle. Instead, they watched through a crystal ball. It was the third match of the day, featuring Jay against Orochi, a man wearing a mask. Nicola felt that the name sounded familiar. As he looked closer, he realized that Orochi did not have pointed ears. He began to wonder how a human had managed to obtain elven citizenship. Alice explained that while she did not know much about the former hero, Orochi was known to be Colin's mentor. She believed that this connection was likely how he gained citizenship. Nicola understood and pointed out that Alice might end up facing him during the semifinals. On the stage, Jay and Orochi prepared themselves. Jay made the first move, rushing forward and swinging his sword. Orochi did not react at first. Jay's blade struck his neck, but instead of blood, Orochi's body dissolved into smoke. In the next instant, a sharp slash echoed through the arena. Orochi had already appeared behind Jay. Alice was surprised by what had just happened. Nicola explained that Orochi had used magic to turn his body into mist to avoid the attack, then struck during the brief opening. Alice recognized the technique, realizing that the same kind of magic was written in the grimoire she had obtained before. There was no doubt it was the same type. She then wondered if the former hero could still continue after taking such a hit. Nicola believed that Jay was a persistent fighter and that something like this alone would not be enough to defeat him. However, in the next moment, Jay coughed up blood and collapsed to the ground. The match was decided, and Orochi was declared the winner. The crowd erupted in cheers. Alice was surprised by how quickly it ended, seeing that Jay had been taken down so decisively. Orochi's katana had been infused with magic, strong enough to cut through Jay's chi armor. Alice focused on the significance of that weapon, while Nicola accepted that his chance to settle things with Jay would have to wait. He turned his attention back to Alice, stating that they needed to develop a strategy to defeat Orochi. Alice agreed without hesitation. Nicola quietly reminded himself that he would eventually get his revenge on Jay, but for now, his priority remained with Alice. A few days earlier, Jay and Mary were walking outside the town. Mary felt that he should already move on, but Jay understood that the situation was frustrating for both of them. Their chance to bring the heroes' party back together had fallen apart right in front of them. Mary accepted the outcome, seeing it as a simple defeat that could not be changed. Even so, she had something in mind. She knew that her master wanted his new pupil to win the tournament, and she believed that providing information about Orochi would be enough to help. Jay pointed out that they did not know anything about Orochi. Mary corrected that assumption. Orochi used Eastern magic, a style that was not widely understood in this part of the world. However, she held confidence in her own knowledge. Known as the top magician in size, she had studied such techniques and could share what she knew. She decided that she would go to her master and pass on that information. She then asked if Jay would come along, but he refused. Mary questioned his decision, considering that it could be his opportunity to make things right. Jay admitted that, despite everything, he still held onto his pride as a former hero. Showing himself after such a defeat did not sit well with him. Mary understood his hesitation. Even so, Jay asked her to deliver something on his behalf. He handed her a small bottle. When she examined it, he explained that it was something he had received from a stranger. The potion was said to enhance both magical power and chi while also healing wounds instantly. Mary wondered if it could be dangerous, but Jay reassured her that he had already asked an alchemist to examine it. The result confirmed that it was genuine. If used at the right moment, it could be useful for Nicola's plans. Mary accepted the request and asked if there was anything else. Jay then wanted her to pass along his apology. He regretted his actions and understood that forgiveness might never come, but he still wanted Nicola to know how he truly felt. Mary acknowledged this and agreed to deliver his message. Mary assured herself that she would deliver the message and quietly walked away. After some time, she arrived at the inn where Nicola and Alice were staying. She let out a small breath before knocking on the door. When Alice opened it, she was surprised to see Mary standing there. Nicola immediately questioned her presence. Mary explained that she had come because she wanted to help. Nicola found that hard to accept and questioned her intentions. Mary stated that she had knowledge of Eastern magic and asked to be allowed to share what she knew, especially regarding the techniques used by Orochi. Nicola refused, making it clear that he did not trust her. In his view, there was still a possibility that she could be trying to deceive them with false information. He apologized but told her to leave. Mary did not back down and insisted that she genuinely wanted to help. Nicola repeated himself more firmly, raising his voice and ordering her to leave. Tears began to gather in Mary's eyes. At that moment, Alice stepped in and stopped her. She held Mary back and took a closer look at her. Alice recognized her as a magician and carefully observed her expression. She felt that Mary was not lying about her intentions and believed that she truly wanted to help. Nicola disagreed, insisting that they could not trust her. However, Alice stood her ground. She believed that Mary was not an enemy and that there was reason to give her a chance. When Nicola asked what made her think that, Alice explained her reasoning. If Mary had intended to deceive or harm her, she could have simply attacked her by surprise before the match. Given the difference in strength between them, it would have been a much easier approach. Nicola acknowledged the logic but still hesitated. Alice then reminded him of something he had taught her, that knowledge itself was a form of strength. If the information Mary had could improve her chances against Orochi, then it was worth hearing. Nicola looked between them and eventually gave in, deciding that listening would not cause harm. Mary's expression softened as her eyes brightened, relieved that she had been given the chance to speak. After that, Mary showed them footage of a mock battle involving one of her acquaintances. Through the crystal ball, they watched the fight unfold. She explained that the magic being used there was the same type employed by Orochi. The spell allowed the user to transform their body into forms such as light or fog, making it so that the main body would take no damage while in that state. Nicola considered this and wondered if there were any downsides. Mary confirmed that there were. The spell placed a heavy burden on the user, as it required altering the body's state and then restoring it back to normal. Even the most skilled magicians could not use it repeatedly without strain. In addition, the caster had to activate it consciously, meaning that sudden attacks could still catch them off guard and leave them vulnerable. Mary concluded that this was all the useful information she could provide. Nicola acknowledged it and felt that it could prove helpful. He then indicated that their discussion was over and implied that she should leave. Mary paused, saying there was one more thing. She took out a small bottle and placed it on the table, explaining that Jay had asked her to deliver it. The item was a one-time use substance that could push one's power to its limits. Nicola was surprised to hear that it came from Jay and immediately suspected it might be poison. Mary assured him that she had already examined it and found no harmful effects. Jay believed that it could be useful. She also conveyed his apology, making it clear that he wanted Nicola to know how he felt. Nicola remained silent for a moment. He admitted that he could not trust either Jay or Mary just yet. He decided that he would have an alchemist examine the potion before making any use of it. If that condition was acceptable, then he would take it. Mary accepted this with a small smile and prepared to leave. However, before she could go, Alice stopped her. She expressed a desire to learn magic from Mary, asking if she would be willing to teach her. Mary was caught off guard by the request. Alice explained that she could already use a form of magic that allowed her to change her form, but it only lasted for a short time and was not practical in battle. Because of that limitation, she wanted Mary to teach her properly so she could master and make use of that ability. Nicola immediately rejected the idea. Alice responded by pointing out that, at their current level, defeating Orochi would be difficult, something he already understood. She reminded him of his own teachings, that one should not be overly concerned about the methods used to achieve victory. With a small smile, she accepted that this approach could be seen as her own way of being cautious. She then turned to Mary, making it clear that she would be relying on her guidance. Mary glanced at Nicola, uncertain, and waited for his approval. Nicola hesitated, rubbing his head before finally allowing Alice to proceed as she wished. Alice accepted his decision and moved quickly, taking both Nicola's and Mary's hands and bringing them together in a handshake. Mary responded with a gentle smile toward Nicola. The day of the semifinals arrived. Backstage, Nicola approached Cone and asked if he was concerned about the results of the day. Cone answered that his mentor would be competing, and he could not miss the chance to watch him. Nicola brought up Orochi and questioned who was behind the mask. Cone seemed surprised that he did not already know. When Nicola pressed for clarification, Cone chose not to explain, suggesting that it might be better for him not to know yet. He remarked that Orochi was simply acting in his own way and that the truth would reveal itself in time before leaving. Alice then approached Nicola, asking if something was wrong. Nicola dismissed it and shifted the focus, asking if she had rested enough. Alice confirmed that she had. Soon after, they noticed Orochi approaching. Orochi recognized Nicola and addressed him, remarking that he had not expected to meet him there. Nicola was confused and questioned whether they knew each other. Orochi explained that the magic he had been using to alter his voice might have made it hard to recognize him. Then he removed his mask. Nicola looked at him, confused at first. As the mask came off, recognition set in. Orochi revealed himself, and Nicola realized that the man standing before him was his father. Nicola questioned what he was doing there. Orochi explained that it was not a simple matter. After returning from his journey to the east, he had taken in several pupils, and one of them happens to be Cone. Because of that, he decided to join the war for the throne, partly out of interest and partly because chances to take part in something like this did not come often. Nicola brought up that Sat Ella had been deeply worried about him. Orochi acknowledged it, recognizing her as someone kind by nature. Still, he had always believed in letting Nicola and Sat Ella live as they wished. He then wondered why Nicola had not recognized him earlier. Orochi reflected on how it felt when Nicola failed to realize who he was during their encounter in the dungeon. That made Nicola pause, realizing something important. He connected it to the fake Sat Ella he had encountered in the skeleton dungeon and began to understand that it had been Orochi all along. Nicola thought that if Orochi had wanted to be recognized, he should have used his real name. Orochi, however, believed that genuine bonds could overcome any disguise or false appearance. He also noted that if people knew he was competing, the entire arena would likely be filled with spectators. Nicola considered that as something expected from one of the top 5 adventurers in the world. Orochi then turned his attention to Alice, expressing interest in their upcoming match. Alice responded with equal determination. Soon after, they moved to the arena. Sat Ella announced that the semi-finals were about to begin and called for the participants to step forward into the battlefield. On one side stood Orochi, a fighter who had displayed overwhelming strength in his previous matches. On the other stood Princess Alice, the unexpected contender of the tournament, known for using unconventional methods to secure her victories. The stage was set to determine who would come out on top. Both Alice and Orochi stepped forward into the arena. Alice made it clear that she intended to defeat him, while Orochi regarded her as fitting for someone trained by Nicola. With that, the battle began. Orochi moved first, drawing his katana and striking toward Alice. She avoided the attack with precise movement. Orochi recognized that she would need to give everything she had, as he was not an opponent she could afford to hold back against. He expected her to use every method she had learned, even the less honorable ones. Alice acknowledged his speed and steadied herself. This would be her first time using a certain ability in a real fight. She released her chi, letting it flow through her body. In the next instant, she vanished from sight. Orochi immediately recognized the use of magic. Alice reappeared behind him and launched a kick, but before it could land, Orochi's body dispersed into smoke. Her strike passed through empty air. Orochi found it intriguing and realized that she had defeated Rise before. Alice began to understand the connection. Orochi confirmed that the technique came from a grimoire he had brought back from his travels, a spell that only a few could master. Seeing her use it meant that he might have underestimated her. Alice realized that her plan had not worked as intended. Orochi tightened his grip on his katana and struck again. She managed to evade the first slash, but Orochi acknowledged her effort while recognizing that maintaining such speed would not last long. In the next moment he moved swiftly, delivering another strike that cut into her arm. Alice was caught off guard. Orochi followed up immediately with another attack, forcing her down to the ground. From his perspective, the outcome of the match was already decided. Alice looked at him, showing that she was still able to continue. Orochi observed her condition and felt that she should not push herself any further. The crowd reacted loudly, noting that her mana had already been drained and that it was remarkable she was still conscious despite her injuries. Orochi maintained his own standard, unwilling to continue inflicting pain on Nicola's disciple. He then turned towards Satella, ready for the match to be decided. At that moment, Nicola, who had been watching closely, showed a faint smile. Amid the noise of the crowd, Orochi failed to notice Alice's movement. She quickly drank the potion she had been given, restoring her body completely while also boosting her chi and strength. Before Orochi could react, Alice had already closed the distance. With all her strength, she struck him from behind, sending him crashing to the ground. Orochi coughed up blood as he realized what had happened. The sudden turnaround had been made possible by the restorative potion. Even as he acknowledged the move, he recognized it as something fitting for Nicola's disciple. Soon after, he lost consciousness. With the match decided, Satella announced Alice as the winner. She advanced to the finals. A few days later, the finals of the War for the Throne were about to begin. The crowd gathered, looking at the two who had made it to the final match, Colm, the Dark Elf, and Princess Alice. People talked among themselves, wondering who would claim the crown that day. Most believed that Colm would not lose to the princess. Many were convinced that his victory was certain, while others spoke of a new era led by the Dark Elves. Among the High Elves, there were those who questioned whether Alice had any real chance of winning. At that time, someone knocked on a door. Nicola apologized for calling him all the way there and acknowledged Colm's achievement in reaching the finals. Colm dismissed the praise, aware that it was not genuine. Nicola admitted as much, pointing out that if Colm had fallen at any point, Alice would have likely taken the win instead. Colm chose to move past that and focused on the real matter. He wanted to know if what Nicola had written in the letter was true, questioning whether he could truly help him reunite with the person he had been searching for. Nicola remained calm and suggested easing into the conversation, even offering a drink, though Colm refused, suspecting it could be poisoned. It was clear that Colm held deep distrust toward him. Colm then asked about the whereabouts of the elven princess. Nicola explained that he had arranged for them to speak privately and had asked Alice to step out. He also preferred that she not be involved in what they were about to discuss. The tone shifted as Nicola directly brought up Colm's search for his sister. Colm immediately reacted, wanting to know if Nicola truly knew where she was. Nicola claimed that he did, and that he could arrange for them to meet if Colm wished. Colm remained cautious, questioning whether this was some kind of trap. Nicola asked what made him think that, but Colm pressed further, wondering why Nicola would have any knowledge about the whereabouts of his long-lost sister. Nicola explained that Alice, being a princess, had access to a wide range of information, which was how he came to know. Colm then asked if Nicola was truly willing to let him meet her. Nicola confirmed that he would, but only under one condition. Nicola brought up what he had heard, that Colm had entered the War for the Throne in order to search for his sister. He wanted confirmation if that was truly his reason. Colm did not deny it. That had always been his goal. His sister had been persecuted by the High Elves when she was still a child, and it was during that time that he lost track of where she had gone. She had become the target of their hatred, treated as a scapegoat for everything. Because of that, Colm had made a vow. He would grow stronger, become someone capable of protecting her, and one day rescue her. He had promised that he would stand by her side and keep her safe for the rest of her life. That was why, even with his doubts, he was willing to trust Nicola, even if there was a chance it could be a trap. Nicola listened and came to understand his resolve. He admitted that he could not act immediately, but he had begun to grasp what Colin was going through. He assured him that he would arrange for him to meet his sister and stood by that promise. Colin remained cautious, choosing not to place expectations on those words. On the day of the finals, the crowd gathered once again, their voices filling the area. Amid the noise, Nicola's father approached him. Nicola recognized that he had come to watch his pupil fight. Orochi confirmed that was the case, as he was there for the same reason. Nicola then mentioned that his father owed him for what happened in the semifinals. Orochi questioned what he meant. Nicola believed that if Orochi had truly gone all out, Alice would not have been able to win. Orochi dismissed that idea, stating that he had already fought seriously. He then turned the question back, wondering about Alice's chances in the upcoming match. Nicola simply showed a calm expression, seeing no reason to be concerned. Nicola had already set a plan in motion to ensure her victory. Orochi acknowledged Colin's strength, speaking from the perspective of his mentor. While Colin's techniques might not be as refined, his determination to become the next king was unmatched. Nicola remained firm in his belief that Alice would still win. He seemed confident, almost as if he was looking forward to proving it. After that, Nicola stood up. Orochi noticed and wondered where he was going. Nicola simply left, saying he needed to meet someone. Meanwhile, at the arena, both finalists stood facing each other on the stage. Satella noticed Orochi watching from the side and learned that Nicola had stepped away to meet someone. She accepted it and turned her attention back to the crowd. She announced that everything would come to an end that day, for better or worse. The final match between the High Elves and the Dark Elves was about to begin. She confirmed that both fighters were ready. Alice stood prepared, and Colin showed the same readiness. With that, Satella declared the final match. The battle between Colin and Alice began. Elsewhere, Iris was watching as the match unfolded. She questioned Nicola's decision to call her there, pointing out that she should have been by the king's side. Nicola reassured her that there was no need to worry, as the top magician in size was covering for her absence. Iris then asked what he wanted from her. Nicola revealed that he had a favor to ask. He intended for her to reunite with her brother. Iris was taken aback and quickly understood his intention. She recognized that it was for the sake of the princess, but she could not bring herself to face her brother again. Nicola acknowledged the risks involved, including the danger she could face if her true identity were exposed. However, Iris clarified that her fear was not about her own safety. What troubled her was the possibility of facing her brother's resentment. Nicola questioned why Colin would resent her, as it did not seem like something he would do. Iris, however, was certain. She believed that Colin, her only remaining blood relative, would feel resentment toward her for hiding away on her own. To her, it was only natural that he would despise her. Because of that, she felt she did not have the courage to face him. Nicola reminded her that Colin wanted to see her and insisted that he did not hold any resentment. Iris dismissed it as mere speculation, but Nicola remained firm, convinced that his understanding was correct. He also pointed out that she already knew how much Alice could benefit from her meeting Colin at that moment. Iris turned her gaze toward the stage, where the battle between Alice and Colin was already underway. Alice was visibly exhausted. Nicola pressed her, asking which mattered more to her, Alice or Colin. Iris answered without hesitation, choosing the princess. Nicola then stated that even if his assumption about Colin's feelings turned out to be wrong, she would still be able to face whatever resentment came from him. What mattered was that she could help Alice through this. He made it clear that the decision was hers to make. The crowd roared as the fight intensified. Colin rushed forward and unleashed a series of relentless attacks. Alice managed to block some of them, but the pressure continued to build. Suddenly, Colin landed a heavy side kick that struck her hard. Alice steadied herself and faced him. Colin could not understand why she refused to surrender, as the outcome seemed clear from their exchange. Struggling to catch her breath, Alice held on to her resolve. Her goal remained unchanged, to build a nation where high elves and dark elves could live together. That was why she could not afford to lose. Colin acknowledged her determination and prepared to bring the fight to an end, but just as he was about to move, a voice called out to him. He turned toward the source of that familiar sound. Iris stood there, looking directly at him. Colin immediately recognized her presence. After all this time, he had finally found her. The crowd grew restless at the sudden interruption. Alice was taken by surprise, wondering why Iris had appeared there and what she intended to do. Colin stepped forward, facing her, and identified himself as her older brother. Colin stepped forward and asked if she still remembered him. At that moment, Alice clenched her fist and moved without hesitation. She struck Colin from behind with a sudden kick, and before he could react, she followed up with a strong punch that sent him crashing to the ground. As he lay there, his focus shifted entirely. He had finally found Iris after all the time he had spent searching for her. The struggle, the conflict, and even his involvement in the tournament no longer mattered to him. His grudge against the High Elves had only ever been a means to reach her. Seeing her again made everything feel worth it. Iris faced him and wondered if he held any resentment toward her for what had happened. Colton did not. He had no intention of blaming her. Instead, he turned his thoughts to the past and acknowledged that he had failed to keep the promise he made long ago. He understood that she must have gone through great suffering during the time she was persecuted. Because of that, he resolved to protect her from now on. He reached out and embraced her, and both of them were overcome with emotion. In that moment, they reaffirmed their bond, choosing to stand by each other no matter what. Alice watched quietly from the side as the two reunited. Colm then made his decision clear. He chose to give up the match. With that, Ella announced that Colm had conceded. The crowd responded with loud cheers, acknowledging both of them. She then declared that Princess Alice had won the war for the throne and would become the new monarch of the Elf Kingdom. The arena filled with celebration as her name was called. Backstage, Alice ran straight toward Nicola and embraced him, overwhelmed by what had just happened. Nicola acknowledged her effort, recognizing her victory. Alice credited everything to him, believing she could not have won without his plan. Nicola, however, felt that she did not need to downplay her own efforts. She had won the tournament through her own efforts. Nicola then turned to her and wondered what she planned to do next. Alice did not immediately understand what he meant. Nicola explained that as the new ruler of the elves, she would surely be occupied with her responsibilities, leaving no time to continue training under him. He pointed out how much she had changed, no longer the weak princess she once was, but now the strongest martial artist in the Elf Kingdom. Alice believed that all of it was thanks to him, but Nicola corrected that thought. Her strength came from her own effort, from everything she had pushed herself to endure. At the same time, he admitted that he had also grown alongside her. He reflected on himself, acknowledging that while he possessed great physical strength, his heart had once been weak. After being cast out of the hero's party, he had lost faith in others. His pursuit of strength had been a way to avoid that pain, strengthening his body to protect his heart from betrayal. However, meeting Alice had changed him. The part of him that had closed off began to open again, allowing him to trust people once more. The person he used to be would have reacted differently, especially when faced with someone like Mary. He recognized that Alice had helped him just as much as he had helped her. Because of that, he felt proud to have been her teacher. Nicola then raised his hand as if preparing to leave. Before he could go, Alice stopped him and asked what he intended to do now. Nicola admitted that he had not decided yet, but he was considering becoming a teacher in another country. Alice immediately moved toward him, unwilling to accept that. She remembered how weak she once was, and how everything changed after meeting him. She had always wanted to help others but lacked the strength to do so. That weakness had weighed heavily on her, until he pulled her out of it. Even now, she felt that she still had much to learn and that her flaws remained. Because of that, she wanted him to stay by her side, believing that only he could continue guiding her forward. As long as he remained with her, she believed she could overcome anything. Nicholas saw through her determination and considered her words. He regarded her as someone who always asked for more, and in turn, saw himself as someone willing to indulge that. With a faint smile, he decided that finding a new path could wait for another time. Alice moved closer and embraced him, holding on to the moment without hesitation.